DK Show coming to you from the TDS Sports Talk studios here in the great EC Eau Claire. Big thanks for tuning in however you're tuning in, whether it's on the radio dials, 105.1 FM, 790 AM, also available online at sportstalk1051.com. Stream it up over there. Got the app, the Sports Talk app. Download it, take it on the go. Your smart devices, smart speakers, and video streams are up and rolling right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter/X, and Instagram. What do we got on our game plan for us this morning as we wrap up the week? We've got a little inside the training room coming up in about an hour from now. Dr. Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine will be joining us. We've got some local sports roundup. Brandon Berg, Chippewa Herald will be joining us for the recapping and previewing the latest in some local sports there. So we got that. We got cream of the crop. Send us your picks for a little cream of the crop. Who are your picks? All right, cream of the crop. If you just don't know what that is, it's kind of like a shout out of the week or something like that sort of thing. So you can make your picks by texting us or commenting on the video streams and such. Also, we're going to talk we'll talk a little bit more Brewers here this morning too, as we inch closer and closer to pitchers and catchers reporting. So we'll get to that, especially with B with us here this morning. So we got that. What else are we going to hit up here this morning? We're going to talk we'll talk some hoops with the Bucks back in action tonight, taking on the San Antonio Spurs tomorrow. We've got some college basketball action. Badgers are going to be taking on Northwestern. Marquette's in a battle of ranked teams. UConn, though. UConn falling a little bit this year. They're ranked 25th right now. Marquette ranked number 9 in the country, but it'll be Marquette versus UConn coming up tomorrow night as well. So we'll throw in some hoops chats here as well. We're going to talk some green and gold for us this morning. We've got some news surrounding some position coaches with the Packers. We've been waiting for a while now to see, well, who the heck is going to be the defensive line coach for the Packers. We now know who that is. However, Green Bay will now be looking for a new linebackers coach too, because in case you missed it last night, it was reported that Anthony Campanelli, the Packers linebackers coach, also was their running game coordinator, has been hired as the defensive coordinator for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, darn it. Words I can't say right now. I wanted Anthony Campanelli. Hopefully nobody was going to hire him, and was really hoping he'd stick around and stay and such, but didn't happen. So, but that's a big loss. I think that's a big loss. So Matt LaFleur, Jeff Hafley will be looking for a new linebackers coach, but they do have a new defensive line coach, DeMarcus Covington. He spent last season as the defensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. Before that, he was a position coach for the Patriots, so he did work under Bill Belichick. Started off as an outside linebackers coach, then transitioned to defensive line coach for a few seasons before being named defensive coordinator under Gerard Mayo's first year last year. So younger dude too. I mean, I'm at that point now too where coaches are younger than me, but he's younger than me. But he's got I realize we probably don't know a whole lot about him and such. So I got a little background, got some quotes from some players or some other coaches and such, and we'll talk a little bit about it. And I'll say the one thing, like, I'm not going to blow smoke up, what's, and say, well, this is a bad hire, this is a great hire and such. Truth is, we don't know a whole lot about him. We can only go based off of what we see and what we can look up. But there is one thing. There's one thing that stood out to me, and it intrigues me. And I'll talk about that coming up here in just a little bit. But it's something that intrigues me that he worked with in New England, and I think there's something comparable coming into Green Bay, and that's where it maybe gives me a little bit of optimism, if that's the right word. So talk about that coming up here. But Packers also promoting Sean Mannion to quarterbacks coach, former quarterback Sean Mannion. Had spent this past year as an assistant offensive coach for the Packers. Kind of seemed like, okay, when he was first hired, it was like, oh, is this like a quarterback coach in waiting, training under Tom Clements and such. And once Tom Clements announced that he was going to be retiring and such, it just felt like that was the natural progression to promote Sean Mannion to quarterbacks coach, and that is the case. So Luke Getsy just seems like he's going to be an offensive assistant somewhere on this team, unless there's other coaches moving on from the offensive side that he could fill in that. But I think it's for Sean Mannion having 1 year under his belt, having an assistant, being an assistant to Tom Clements essentially, and then okay, here's your job, but also you got a guy like Luke Getsy who has been a quarterbacks coach before, offensive coordinator. I think he's gonna help out in that department over there too. So, but we'll talk some coaches, quarterback or Packers coaches coming up here in just a little bit. Mentioned Bucks are back in action tonight. We are now officially under a week away from the NBA trading deadline. So we'll go over again if there's any more rumors, rumblings, that sort of thing. The rest of the All-Star teams were announced last night, the reserves. So we knew Giannis was selected as a starter, while his running mate Damian Lillard was elected to another All-Star game. So two Bucks reps in the All-Star game. Don't know if any of our listeners were pumped about that, but I know my 7-year-old was very pumped up about Damian going to the All-Star game too. So we'll hit some hoops talk coming up here as well. And whatever else is on your mind this morning. What else is on your mind? Hit me up with some text 715-830-1912 or comment on the video streams or hit me up with an email dan@sportstalk1051.com. Hit me up on the socials at DANKASPER on X/Twitter, Facebook.com/Casper Sports, or Instagram over there too. Dan Casper Sports there too. But let's jump right into it because I've got a little bit of a feeling that some of you've got some things to say about these assistant coaches, position coaches, and such for the Packers. And well, there's one thing that intrigues me about DeMarcus coming, and maybe I'm overthinking it and that, but there is one thing that kind of intrigues me thinking about this a little bit. But we'll go over again. We don't know a whole lot about it. I'm not going to pretend like I'm an expert and know everything about DeMarcus Covington and such, but go over some of what some people who have worked with Covington have said about him. We'll take a look at that, and then the loss of Anthony Campanelli. There is something that concerns me about the loss of Anthony Campanelli when it comes to this defense. There is something that concerns me about this. And I'll talk about that coming up here too. So let's jump right into it, shall we? We'll take our first break and then get things going here on this Friday morning. Coming up on the leadoff, we'll begin talking a little green and gold in case you're just waking up and maybe you didn't see the news from last night. The Packers will be losing, I think, a very important position coach. So we'll hit that up after these quick words. Want to head to the Brewers home opener? Well, with Wisco Trips, you can just head to either wiscotrips.com or sportstalk1051.com and click on the icon there on the left-hand side of the home page. You'll see it over there. Again, otherwise, head to wiscotrips.com. And they've got a bus going to the Brewers home opener Monday, March 31st, going up against the Royals that day. So got a game ticket to the Johnsonville party deck that includes food and beverages, tailgate party beforehand, round trip, motor coach, transportation, all that good stuff. More details and to purchase your tickets, head to wiscotrips.com. We begin this morning on the leadoff. Let's talk a little football here this morning because let's recap kind of a busy day yesterday in terms of Green Bay and such. So we know who the new defensive line coach is. We know who the new quarterbacks coach is, and now Green Bay will be looking for a new linebackers coach. Let's start off with the new coaches. Quarterbacks coach, nothing. I don't think we don't need to really deep dive into that one that much because it's Sean Mannion. We knew it was probably going to be Sean Mannion, who was hired last year as an offensive assistant. And it just kind of felt like, oh, Tom Clement's getting up there in experience and age. Could this be like an on-the-job training? And then, when he calls it a career, Sean Mannion, maybe just the perfect promotion there. And that's how it worked out. And I think it will help him that Luke Getsy is going to be on the staff. Luke Getsy, a former quarterbacks coach himself, along with a former wide receivers coach and two-time offensive coordinator. So he still has, some veteran coaches on to kind of lean on a little bit with his first year on the job as quarterbacks coach. So I don't think that was a big surprise for many. The one that a lot of Packers fans were kind of curious and interested about was who's going to be this defensive line coach, because for one, it was the only firing on this coaching staff, at least that we know of right now, unless one kind of flew under the radar. But it was the only firing, and so and it wasn't a surprise either, because I think a lot of Packers fans, if there was a big gripe from this year or big complaints, was the defensive line play. And so it just felt like, okay, yeah, that moves makes sense. And then we started to hear about Casey Rogers from Tampa, Eric Washington, former defense coordinator with the Bears, longtime defensive line coach too. I think he was a defense coordinator for the Panthers, and that's. And then the Jets defensive line coach, so Robert Saleh connection, but he went to Dallas. And then Packers fan, after Casey Rogers was signed up and Aaron was signed up, White Cotton was signed up, it's like, who is Green Bay going to get? Running out of guys. And lo and behold, it's a dude that spent last year as a defensive coordinator for the Patriots, but has been with the Patriots organization for 8 years. Still, he's only 35 years old too. But the Packers apparently hiring DeMarcus Covington as defensive line coach. So a position coach, we don't necessarily a lot of times pay a lot of attention to position coaches and such, but I think given we saw the improvements from the defense this year, but the biggest complaint from a lot of Packers fans from this past year was pass rush and, maybe the play from the defensive line. I was like, okay, we got to get somebody that can maybe get the most out of these guys here, because we've got money invested in Kenny Clark and Sean Gary, draft picks and Devontae Wyatt and Lucas Van Ness. So Packers going with DeMarcus Covington. Again, spent last year as defensive coordinator for the Patriots, but years before that, spent a few years as a defensive line coach and outside linebackers coach. This is from Bill Huber from SI.com. And some quotes from him back when he was first promoted as defensive coordinator for the Patriots, and some quotes from his players and such. This was from Covington when he was promoted to defensive coordinator. Said, when you turn on the tape, what we want to see is a physical team, a team that plays with good discipline and fundamentals, and a team that attacks the football and takes it away from the opponent. That's what we are looking for from our defense, and a team that goes out there and plays together and for one another. That type of togetherness is what we're really looking for. Should also note here too, as Bill noted in his piece, So every year, Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network puts together a list of like up and coming coaches, to kind of like a watch list. And he was listed on there twice. He was listed on there twice. And he did have experience being defensive coordinator last year at the Senior Bowl. Some other quotes from his eyes. He's a veteran. Covington is a very intelligent coach, being able to read offenses, and he's always been able to break down other to be prepared for them. He's a very intelligent coach, loves to give speeches to the team and get everybody fired up. He brings the best out of guys when he speaks, very passionate, not very loud, but when he does speak, his voice is heard. He also said that he has a great understanding of the entire defense and scheme. He can coach defensive line, linebackers, and defensive backs. He sees the big picture. He's a good players coach and can control the room. Another quote, this Barrymore. The man's got the wisdom. He has the mentality and he knows a lot. Smart coach. I think he does have a chance to be a head coach one day. So there's just a couple quotes. Again, I'm not going to pretend like I know everything about, and a lot of us don't know a whole lot of Covington. What we do know is that, okay, New England's been good the last couple of years, so we focus on that. And we focus a lot on, defensive numbers and statistics, especially since he was the defensive coordinator last year for New England. Like, oh gosh, they were really bad in a lot of these categories. New England was just a bad team overall and lacking a lot of talents and depth. So I don't want to, just or hire, or he's not going to work out because of New England as a team last year and the players that they. But I will say the thing that intrigues me the most about DeMarcus Covington, and again, maybe this is just me kind of trying to find something positive in this thing, but the thing that intrigues me with him is his first year. I shouldn't say first year, it was actually his third year. Yeah, because 2017-18, he was a coaching assistant. 19, he was promoted to outside linebackers coach. And then 2020 to 2023, moved to defensive line coach. The thing is, though, when he was defensive line coach, he had guys that he was coaching at defensive line that were also former like 3-4 edge rushers, outside linebackers and such, or, guys that would fit in a 3-4 system as edge rushers, outside linebackers. And that's the part that intrigues me with this, because you look at Green Bay, right? I mean, you look at Green Bay, well, they've got those same type of players, right? I mean, you go to a couple of years ago when they were a 3-4, and you had Rashawn Gary standing up and Lucas Van Ness in his rookie year standing up, and then you have them putting their hands, in the dirt there. So the fact that he's got a little bit of experience working with guys who initially were standing up or edge rushers, and then, trying to incorporate them into defensive linemen and such, like one guy that, he worked with quite a bit. He's not there and with anymore with the Patriots, but Matthew Judon, remember him? So, he's worked with other stand-up players, defensive ends, outside linebackers and such. So that's the part that intrigues me. It intrigues me in a way like, okay, can he help maybe take these guys? If there was a little bit of an adjustment for like a Lucas Van Ness or a Rashawn Gary, if there was a little bit of adjustment from standing up, 2-point stance, and then you're transitioning into a 4-3 defensive end, You've got a defensive line coach that has experience with that. He has some experience with that. And that's what intrigues me with this, is that can he help? Because that ultimately his job's going to be, can he get Kenny Clark playing at a high level, Rashawn Gary playing at a high level, get Lucas Van Ness playing at a high level, getting the most out of those guys. Can he do that? That's his job. And that's what intrigues me a little bit with Covington coming in here, because he has that experience of working with guys that maybe, a little outside linebacker, defensive end core, relationship. They're trying to getting those guys adjusted to that, or switching kind of positions. You know what I'm getting, that sort of thing. Getting those outside linebackers to play defensive ends and such, and just having that experience and helping transition those guys to those certain type of positions. And you look at some of the defensive linemen that he has coached, when he was over with New England, former Packer at one time, Lawrence Guy, he's on there too. And we mentioned Christian Barrymore and such. So again, I don't want to come to a conclusion off this hiring based off of, where the Patriots ranked in some categories and such last year when he was a defensive coordinator, just because of how bad they were all over. And that was a talent problem when it comes to the Patriots and such. And it's great we got these quotes from former players and such. It's like, cool, all right, awesome. We don't know how it's going to work out. We don't know how it's going to play out until games actually start and they're back on the field and such, and we see improvement from these players and such. But again, the thing that intrigues me the most is him being able to, have that experience where he was working with outside linebackers, helping them transition to defensive ends, and working with that. Can that help a guy like a Rashawn Gary? Can that help a guy like a Lucas Van Ness? And his experience working with, some defensive tackles like a Christian Barrymore. Christian Barrymore, 8.5 sacks, 1 year. Can he help Kenny Clark develop into a dominant 4-3 defensive tackle? Can he get this group, to get after the quarterback and put pressure using 4? We know that's the goal. Matt LaFleur has talked about it after the season. Jeff Hafley has talked about it. Got to get pressure with 4. This is why I think a lot of fans were looking at this position and looking at this job as like, we've got to get this one. We got to hit it. And is it the sexiest pick? No, it's not. It's probably not the sexiest pick for a lot of people out there. But let's see it play out. Let's see how it works out. The thing, though, so looked like for a hot minute yesterday, okay, Green Bay's got their coaching staff all set and done. It's all in place, ready to go. Here we go. Anthony Capinelli, though, he had interviewed for the Jaguars defensive coordinator job earlier in the week. And last year he interviewed for the Giants defensive coordinator job before ultimately going to Green Bay. And him and Jeff Hafley have a friendship. They'd known each other for a long time. When, Hafley was hired and then Campanelli was hired, they kind of talked about they'd always wanted to kind of work with each other and work with each other for a few years. Well, that's only lasted a year, as Campanelli is now going to the Jaguars as the defensive coordinator position. So Green Bay now will be looking for a new linebackers coach. Now, again, could they perhaps look within their own staff and maybe, promote somebody out there? Possibly. They could. Or maybe they're looking from the outside in again. I will say I think this is a big loss for this defense. I think it's a big loss for this linebacking group. Um, I look at this as I think it's a big loss for the development of Edgerrin Cooper. I mean, Edgerrin Cooper in his rookie year, to me, should be a defensive rookie of the year finalist. I thought you saw some strides from Quay Walker this year. And I think this is going to be I think it's a big loss for the development of those two really good linebackers. Or Edgerrin Cooper, the arrow's trending upward. And I still think there's something there for Quay Walker. He's got the intangibles, he's got the physical traits, he's got all this stuff. And I just thought that at Campanelli, maybe another year, a couple years with Quay Walker, it would have been interesting to see if there was continued growth from a guy like Quay Walker, and then just continued growth with Edgerrin Cooper coming off of a very good rookie season. So I think it's a big loss in terms of the development of those linebackers. Now, the in-house option could be uh, Sean Duggan. He's right now just a defensive assistant, but he came over with Jeff Hafley, where he coached linebackers all 4 years, was also co-defensive coordinator in 2023. So maybe there's, a natural promotion there, or maybe there's a different linebacker coach out there. I've got to imagine Green Bay might be casting a net, probably doing some interviews, trying to, find the best candidate available. Because here's the thing, too. They could have just easily, for their defensive line coach, could have just easily promoted their assistant defensive line coach that they already had on roster that had worked with Jeff Hafley in college. They didn't do that, though. They went outside and brought somebody else in. They casted a net to find the best, in their opinion, the best coach that they were looking for. So I don't think it's an automatic conclusion that they're just going to promote one of their assistants to that job, because they could have done that for defensive line and they didn't do that. But I do think it's, again, it's. I was disappointed to see that. I mean, good for the guy, good for Campanelli getting a shot as a defensive coordinator. That's cool, that's great. But just me being selfish as a Packers person, it's like, dang it, because I wanted that guy to stick around. I think when he was hired last year, there was quite a bit of enthusiasm and excitement for Packers fans. And one was because if you watched Hard Knocks when he was with the Lions, you probably knew him. I mean, that's a guy that is very emotional and very passionate and is very fiery. And I think that's what got a lot of Packers fans excited and pumped up about him coming over to Green Bay. But I think you saw in 1 year the impact that he had on a rookie linebacker in Edgerrin Cooper that's got everybody excited. And we saw, I think, some growth from Quay Walker this year. And you would have just liked to have seen that maybe continue to grow a little bit. It's like the quarterback that has to go through a different offensive coordinator every year. And it's probably not the greatest example, but I think it's similar in that aspect. Like, okay, there's going to be a new voice coming in. Maybe some different philosophies, a little bit of a different mentality and such. So I think now this is a big hire. I think this is a big hire for LaFleur, for Jeff Hafley to find a linebackers coach that could come in and take Edgerrin Cooper, what he did his rookie year, and continue to grow from that, continue to get better. What's the next step? What's the next thing in his growth? How can you take Edgerrin Cooper and make him into one of the better linebackers in the league? How can you take Quay Walker, who Xavier McKinney thinks is going to eventually be the best linebacker in football because of all the different things he can do? How do you take Quay Walker? How do you take the positives that he had from this year and continue to make him better? How do you take those two linebackers and elevate their game another level. And assuming they get another linebacker, if you do the 4-3 base defense, maybe it's a rookie. How do you take that rookie and get him off to a fast start and get him off to a good start and mold him into a solid linebacker for this team? Especially when it comes to stopping the run here too, because Anthony Campanelli was a part of the run game coordinator and slowing down the run and stopping the run. So defensive line coach was a big hire for Packers fans. Curious to see who it's going to be. Now we're back to linebackers coach. Curious to see how that one plays out. Who that person's going to be. All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll finish up the first hour. Get to some of your texts and messages. Hit us up, 715-830-1912 on that Shoe Doctor's bullpen line with quick text. Even though the temperatures are pretty warm right now, we know weather can change in a dime here in Wisconsin. So it's always good to stay tuned to our website, sportstalk1051.com, just in case there happens to be any school closings or delays. It's the WEAU 13 News First Alert School Closings brought to you by Hovland's and Service Master. So if we ever get into a situation where maybe the temperatures are so frigid that potentially there could be some delays or closings, or we get some snowfall that could impact some road conditions, make sure you stay tuned to our website for the latest closings and delays. Evan says the pass rush was back half of the league. The 3 years he was defensive line coach in New England. I'm just not seeing a reason to be excited for the hire, but I like having as many former defensive coordinators as we can get. See, to me, though, that's the thing. A lot of it, too, is talent. Casey Rogers, defensive line coach, Tampa, they had more talented defensive line than New England. Aaron Wycott from the Jets, more talent at the defensive line than what New England had. New England didn't have any first-rounders on that defensive line. He's inheriting what I think, and I think a lot of people would think, is probably a more talented defensive line, yet numbers-wise, he got more. I mean, Barrymore alone had 8.5 sacks in 2023. And just this past year for Green Bay, their defense line 16.5. So I mean, one player had half of what this defensive line group had. So that's where I don't want to get caught up in like rankings and numbers and that sort of stuff when he's a position coach or defense, that sort of thing. Because I think part of it though too is the talent aspect. What's the talent that he had to work with in New England? Has it not had talent for a few seasons right now? They've suffered big time in talent. And I think that was part of the intrigue with other guys like a Casey Rogers or some of these guys, because they did fantastic jobs, no question about it. Don't want to take away anything from them, but they also had better talent to work with too. So I don't want to base my, thoughts or come I not let me rephrase that. I don't want to come to a judgment right away off this hiring based off of, just how bad the Patriots have been the last few years. Because I do think there is a difference in what he has to work with and some of the talent that he has to work with over there too. But we'll see how it all works out. There's a lot of people that weren't happy with the Jeff Hafley hire. You're bringing in a defensive coordinator who was in the college game the last few years and was at Boston College. What the heck? When you could have had Wink Martindale or whoever else was out there. I think we're happy with Hafley right now, so I'm willing to see it play out and willing to see how it kind of shakes out here. I'm hoping, but I get it. It's not a sexy pick. It's not a sexy hire. I understand that. But, the sexy hire a few years ago for Green Bay was a guy named Rich Bisaccia, and now you have a lot of Packers fans that want him out. Sexy hires aren't always the things that work out in the end. Aren't always the proven ones in the end. We'll talk some more football coming up a little bit later on and such. I want to talk some baseball as we are less than 2 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting for the Brewers and such. So we'll talk some baseball with Brandon coming up in a little bit here. I know, you've got, what was it I saw last night MLB Network was doing top 100 player countdowns, and they already got one guy who hasn't even made a debut, Sasaki, the new pitcher for the Dodgers, coming in at number 100 and such. So, but we'll talk some Brewers as we inch a little bit closer and such. Bucks are back in action tonight. They're going to be going up against the Spurs. We are now officially less than a week away from the NBA trading deadline. So again, it's the same rumors and rumblings out there. Nothing really new, nothing that has, caught on fire like, oh, this is going to happen and such. But yesterday, if you care about the All-Star game, Damian Lillard was added to the All-Star team, bench player and such. So, yeah, maybe you're excited about that like I was with, or like my kid was yesterday. So, There is one thing. So Bobby Portis has been missing the last few games here. And he wasn't at practice in San Antonio yesterday. And Doc Rivers, when he was asked about it, he said Bobby Portis is, quote, not here yet. When he was asked if that means Portis could get to San Antonio for tomorrow's game, Rivers said he could, but I don't know one way or the other. So I don't know exactly. I know that they said it was like personal reasons and such. And when that first happened, was it a few games ago, last week or so? And then everybody's like, "Oh, could that be, some trade stuff in that?" But you look at, I mean, I think this has kind of proven too just how critical and crucial Bobby Portis is for this team. How big of a piece he is for this team. So, I mean, I want 9 back. I don't know exactly what's all going on here at this point in time. Hopefully everything's okay. But yeah, the fact that he's missed is good. Probably, yeah, missing another game. He's already listed as out. Um, yeah, hope that it's nothing too serious, and it's just listed as. I mean, it's listed as personal reasons. So I haven't seen anything official out there. I haven't seen, what potentially could be going on there. But I know some people, when it first popped up, at least on the socials, they were like, "Oh, is this kind of trending towards maybe a trade?" You know, does that fuel the rumors out there and such? But yeah, I don't know. I'd still be nervous, and I'd still struggle a little bit if they traded Portis, unless it was something like he wanted out, and then okay, maybe that's a little bit different then. But man, I think he's a big piece. Bucks need him. I think if they want to compete for a championship, I think they need Bobby Portis within that rotation. Game time tonight for the Bucks. Tip off at 7 p.m. You can catch it out or catch it here on the radio dials 105.1 FM, 790 AM. Uh, Tomorrow night we got a slate of college basketball. Badgers going to be taking on Northwestern, hoping to bounce back from their loss against Maryland just the other night. Marquette is also in action. Uh, Kind of a big game going up against UConn. UConn's had struggles this year. UConn coming in ranked number 25. Marquette ranked number 9 in the country. So I mean, UConn's had its ups and downs this year. There's no question about it. But I still think this is a big game for Marquette too. Just I mean, it's still UConn. It's still you know got the national championships over there too. And you look at Marquette's schedule, you got UConn tomorrow, and then quietly, I think, up in the rankings, you've got St. John's coming in at number 15. So, a couple big games, and that's going to be on Tuesday for Marquette. But you look at these rankings in college basketball right now as we inch closer to March Madness and such. Auburn's still up at number 1, Duke 2, Iowa State 3, Alabama 4, Florida 5. A lot of the regulars over there. But like a St. John's, I think, is quietly like, okay. Rick Pitino, again, just doing kind of like Rick Pitino stuff over there at St. John's. And that game, depending on what happens with Marquette, and I know St. John's has Providence, but between that Marquette and St. John's game on Tuesday, that could potentially be for first place in the Big East standings because both Marquette and St. John's are at the top of the leaderboard with a 9-1 record, and both sitting there at 18-3 overall. We'll talk some more hoops though coming up a little bit later on. Don't forget to send me your cream of the crops. Who's your cream of the crop? Text it to us 715-830-1912. Coming up after 7 o'clock, we'll catch up with our Dr. Austin Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Latest in some sports injury news out there. So we'll get his takes and his thoughts and chat with him. And then after that, Brandon Berg will join us. We'll do some local sports roundup with Brandon, recapping the latest in local sports and previewing the latest coming up here in the local sports world. A couple texts to catch up with. Ben says, no idea who this defensive line coach is. You can make arguments that he's a good one based off comments from his former players. You can make arguments that he's a bad one based off numbers. The truth is nobody knows. Let's just be optimistic about it and hope for the best. Another text over here says, I look more at the talent and the depth of players that they had in New England, and don't want to judge this new coach based off that. I understand that the numbers aren't great, but this is a position coach. It's not like he's coming in to be defensive coordinator. Let's give the guy a chance to work with some better players in Green Bay than what he did in New England. Then another texter says, sucks to lose our linebackers coach. I thought he potentially could be a future defensive coordinator for the Packers if Jeff Hafley got a head coaching job elsewhere. Hopefully they'll hire a new linebackers coach that can do some more good things with Cooper and Quay. Yeah, I mean, that's going back to another texter who said, Green Bay's got, Derek Ansley Jr. is a former defensive coordinator. He works with the secondary. You got Covington, who's a former defensive coordinator, now coming in with the defensive line. So, I mean, Green Bay's adding position coaches that have experience with defensive coordinators, being a defensive coordinator over there too. I don't know if that's a trait they've been looking for or just a happy accident at this point, but be kind of curious when it comes to whoever their new linebackers coach is. Will it be somebody that, again, has experience being a defensive coordinator? Because if it is, then you can kind of see maybe a little bit of a pattern developing over there too. I like it. I mean, I think it provides you with a lot of different types of experience. So we'll finish up a couple minutes with Morgs. Good morning, Morgs.
Well, when it comes to positions, what would you say is the hardest sport to coach? If you had to think about it objectively or from experience, because I know you've coached like little guys, like little teams and stuff.
Oh, and that's very comparable to the pros.
As a sport, hey, I'm just giving you a chance to chime in here from personal experience. Hey,
no, I'm just saying it's a jest in some coaches.
Exactly,
yeah.
And to the parents who also think they're at a pro level.
Yeah,
sit your butts down in the bleachers and let the kids have fun.
Yep.
So when it comes to coaching, though, do you think there's a more difficult sport than not? Because I know with position coaches and stuff, you get to be so highly specialized. It's not quite the same as team coaching. But if you were going to go team coaching, let's go on every level, on like a high school level, a collegiate level, and then at the pros.
I think football, being a head coach, one would be, because you got two different sides of the ball.
Okay.
Right? You got defense and you're an offense, and a lot of those head coaches, they've grown up, as either offensive minded coach or a defensive minded coach, sort of thing. And I think too, if you're not a play caller, I got to imagine if you're not calling the plays as a head coach for an NFL team, does that kind of, when you hear that play call in, do you like second guess it? That's because I could see me doing that.
Right.
The ego part of it, and it'd be hard not to chime in and
because as a coach, you immediately think that's the primary role is to make the calls. You're the coach.
Right.
You kind of grow up thinking that that's the position that you take, and at the pros, everything is so different.
Right. And I think baseball is unique too, because you're coaching, but you're managing personality. You're managing it. That's why they call it a manager, because I think it's more of a managing the player themselves, and whether it's, we got to take this guy out, or it's a different type of. You can't really. There's game planning, but not as much as like football, I would say.
Or even look at something like basketball. Yeah, at Siggy's level, where she's playing right now in that middle school level, there's so much going on the court, but it's still so much part of learning the game that you're coaching in terms of plays, but also in terms of IQ, like trying to get that basketball IQ or sports IQ bumped up as well, and letting girls know where they need to be on the court at any given time, while making sure that you're trying to run plays and get scores on the board and all that kind of stuff too.
I would say as a youth coach, baseball's easier.
I would say too, because just watching the kids in all the sports, I think basketball has such a learning curve. Some people sure are naturally wired for it and have a natural IQ, but when you're trying to explain the positions, where to be, and then how to take that out and implement it on a larger level in terms of strategy,
and
that gets complicated.
Basketball is a struggle too, because I mean, if you got a kid that's taller than the other, and then at least baseball, everybody's going to get a shot to go up and hit.
Right.
Whereas you get one kid on that basketball team, you ain't getting the ball.
Well, and let's face it, when you're at that middle school, high school level with the dudes and stuff, that's all ego amigos. They just want to
Mhm.
play offense, put points on the board.
Exactly.
Of experience in agriculture, food security, and nutrition challenges. The World Food Prize position will give him the opportunity to continue working on food security and global nutrition challenges. And on Wednesday, 23 states joined Iowa Pork Producers Association and their Proposition 12 appeal to the Supreme Court of the United States. Proposition 12 is California's animal housing law that defines the area required to grow hogs in order to sell pork in California. The Supreme Court ruled against the National Pork Producers Council in 2023 in its challenge to Proposition 12, but Iowa pork producers and the 23 states filed the appeal with the Supreme Court under a discrimination claim of violating interstate commerce. That's the trade between states. And Wisconsin's 2025 Corn Soy Expo is preparing for another record-breaking turnout this year. This event is co-hosted by the Wisconsin Soybean Association, Wisconsin Corn Growers Association, and the Wisconsin Pork Association at the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells, February 6th and 7th. The event features keynote speakers, more than 120 companies that are part of the two-day trade show, breakout sessions covering the latest agriculture topics, and oh, so much more. Wisconsin Corn will be celebrating 50 years of the Corn Growers Association at this year's expo. And that's some ag news here on Sports Talk 105.1. I'm Joe Welke.
For over 50 years, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine has been Western Wisconsin's trusted leader in orthopedic care. Whether you're facing bone and joint pain, sports injuries, or complex spine issues, their expert team is dedicated to helping you live pain-free. Now with their new state-of-the-art facility in Rice Lake, you can enjoy clinic visits, advanced imaging, and personalized physical therapy all under one roof. Visit cvosm.com to get back to doing what you love pain-free. Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, where high-quality care meets hometown commitment.
Rapid radios are instant push-to-talk walkie-talkies offering national LTE coverage. For a limited time, go to rapidradios.com now for 60% off and free UPS shipping. Add code radio and get an extra 5% off.
Ladies and gentlemen, sports aficionados and armchair quarterbacks, welcome to the Dan Casper Show, where sports passion meets expert analysis. Dan's encyclopedic knowledge and infectious passion for all things sports is both impressive and sad.
I have many leather-bound books.
So get ready to laugh, cheer, and maybe even facepalm a few times.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
It's the Dan Casper Show.
Second hour kicking off right now on this Friday morning, the final day of January to February. Coming at you tomorrow. We made it through this month. Means spring's coming up, hopefully. Kind of feels like spring right now. Big thanks for tuning in however you may be tuning in from. We're going to talk some baseball coming up here. We got some hoops chat as well. We'll get back to some football talk as well because I know everybody wants to talk about the Pro Bowl skills that kicked off last night, baby. Heck yeah. So, kind of joking, but I will say Hudson loved it last night. So, but we begin this hour, as we usually do, talking with our doc. He is Dr. Austin Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, joining us here this morning. Good morning, Austin. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great.
Yeah. So I know we got is this the first weekend we don't even have football since August, July?
It is.
Oh,
well, we still have it next week, right? But
yeah,
right, we have a little interlude.
Yeah. Unless you're a diehard Pro Bowl, consumer.
Man, I cannot think of. I don't know if I've ever actually watched it live. We watch highlights here and there because there's some things that are worth watching. But yeah, it's never been much of a draw on my end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same here. Maybe when I was younger, when they actually played and Sean Taylor was probably, laying out punters and such.
Man. Oh, I do remember that clip.
Hey, I want to actually talk a little with basketball here because I don't know if you saw this clip. There was a couple days ago, but Zion Williamson, a guy that we know has missed a lot of time with injuries or whatever. And I don't know if he was kind of venting or anything like that, but he was talking to the media and he said, hey, listen, if I could play back-to-back nights, I would play back-to-back nights. If I physically feel like I could play back-to-back, I would. But I work for the New Orleans Pelicans and it's their decisions and such. Have you, because I know we've talked about load management, resting and such. Have you seen or have you read or heard about, kind of like trends where you see these maybe bigger teams, opting to not play some of their star players because that trend is to resting some of these guys and for injury, not having the the overuse type of injuries and such?
Yeah, I mean, I think in this circumstance, his track record is certainly what's pushing him. I mean, you alluded to it when you first, commented. I mean, he has missed a lot of time for a number of different injuries. He's had some struggles kind of keeping his weight at optimal levels for playing in the NBA. So I think there's a number of factors that do come into play. And that term, probably was popularized, maybe like 5 or 7 years ago. We first started hearing that load management term, and there was a lot of outcry over it, and it's been a little more accepted now. I think people just kind of like, all right, I guess it's just part of the NBA now. I mean, in our generation, I mean, those guys were Ironmen. I mean, they played every game virtually, and every game near every minute too. I mean, just some of those stats are just mind-boggling, really. There is something to be said. I mean, the guys are, bigger, faster, stronger. There is an element to that, and it just puts more stress in the human body. On the Pelicans end, I mean, it's an investment. I mean, at the end of the day, they're a business, and they want a product on the court that's going to draw fans and draw people buying jerseys and all the stuff that's going to put money in their pockets. And the way they do it is they're saying, look, we maybe have to, quote unquote, manage his load. It's one of those things that it obviously, if they take it a step too far, then it hurts the product. So they're just trying to probably look at it from a sense of like, all right, if we're trying to mix the longevity of him playing and keeping him out there enough to keep him popular, I think that's the balancing act they're looking for. There's certainly not any like data to support like, well, if we limit this many minutes, we're going to alter this. It's probably either the owner, maybe the medical staff is weighing in, but I mean, as a physician, I mean, I can't imagine sitting there being like, well, if we cut his minutes in half, it'll guarantee no injury, nothing like that. So I'm guessing it's more of on the team management side, just saying, look, we're just going to pick and choose, and probably they're going to elect the more, heavily competitive games they'll play, maybe not ones or primetime games, things like that. So I don't know. I mean, it is definitely such a paradigm shift from where we, when we grew up watching the NBA. Just so different. And so it is interesting to get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain to hear him say something like that, where it's not him wanting it necessarily. And it's clearly coming from above. So I don't know. I mean, if he can prove, get a season or two under his belt without missing a lot of time, maybe they'll change their tune. But I mean, I don't think he's played a full season since he's been in the NBA. And I'm not talking like missing the load management games. I think he's been out for big chunks. So I can certainly understand why the ownership is saying, hey, look, let's try and manage some of this.
Right. Hey, I actually, I was reading an article just a couple days ago, the LA Times. Neil Atrash, is that how you pronounce his last name? We've talked about him quite a bit.
Yep. He's a pretty well-known one. Yep.
Yeah, we talked a lot with the Achilles, right? That's the Achilles guy that we've talked a lot about in football and such. And
yeah, he does. I mean, he really kind of came to prominence. I mean, he's a big sports surgeon, but he did Brady's ACL way back when. That was kind of what thrust him on the pedestal of being a little bit more well-known, because Brady was from California, as you know, so he went back there to get his ACL done. So that's kind of thrust him in the limelight, and he's been one of the kind of the big name. There's probably a handful that do a majority of the professional athletes, and he's certainly one of them.
I was reading this. Is actually talking about baseball, and because he was at the awards ceremony last week for Baseball Writers of America, and they were handing out like the MVPs and managers and such. And it was a piece about the uptick in baseball injuries, but there was a line in here. It says, amid all that discussion, however, Elatrash noted a flip side of the narrative that almost gets taken for granted now. For all the injuries plaguing baseball's modern era, players are also recovering from them better and more consistently than ever. And the examples are like, maybe a pitcher coming back from a Tommy John. You talk about the year-long process, but it's actually now like, it's not like if they're coming back, it's gotten to be more like when they're coming back. Would you kind of agree with that assessment?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and there's a lot of things that go into it, but if you look at the prognosis for a lot of injuries, I mean, even 20 years ago, let alone like 40 or 50, I mean, some of these were career-ending just out the block. Now you're seeing guys that are coming back, and not only coming back at a very high level. I mean, the term career-ending injury, you just don't hear it as much anymore, right? I mean, they exist, but there are so many things that guys are coming back from. And it has to do with surgical technique, technology, rehabilitation, nutrition, I mean, the list goes on of what people are doing to try to optimize their health and recovery from injuries, both surgical and non-surgical. So that is 100% factual. I mean, if you look at what we're able to do, return to sport, I mean, that's one of the big variables we look at. So when there's, orthopedic surgeries that are done, we look at return to sport. And those statistics have been on the upwards trends for a number of years now. I mean, at some point there has to be some level of plateauing because you can't get everyone back. But I mean, it is pretty impressive what we're able to get athletes back from nowadays.
Yeah, and especially like I know baseball, a lot has been talked about, pitching and the velocity and such. And I know this was back in a month ago, but they had baseball had a pitching study done for injuries, a pitching injury report and such. And again, they talked a lot, and I know you and I have talked about it a lot too. A lot of it is due to the velocity that these guys are throwing with right now with their arms and that pressure they're putting on their shoulders and elbows. It seems like
100%. I mean, if you look at the human body, guys are bigger and stronger. You can make your muscles bigger. You can't make your ligaments bigger. So the UCL, aka the Tommy John ligament, it's not any bigger than it was in the 1980s, the 1960s, or the 1920s. So in the velocity and the spin that people are throwing with is just ramping up at staggering rates. And so, I mean, I think like a 100-mile-an-hour pitch when we were a kid was like jaw dropping. It was like you'd be talking about it. Now, I mean, half the relievers can hit triple digits. It seems like that's maybe an exaggeration, but I mean, it's just not rare anymore. And you see so many guys that are throwing so hard. And so unequivocally, it has to do with that. I mean, at least specific to shoulders and throwers. I mean, they're just putting torque on the elbow and shoulder at levels that just have never been seen before.
Yeah, I saw this kind of number too. This was a stat that said that in 2008, the average fastball velocity was 91.3 miles per hour, but this past year it jumped up over 3 miles per hour. On the surface, that's only a 3 mile per hour difference, but I think that's a huge jump, don't you?
It's an enormous jump. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, people don't understand the difference between at that level. I mean, it's a bell curve, right? So once you get out to that extreme, those little shifts are just staggering. So yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. That's a tremendous difference in I mean, just the ability to do it, and then of course the ramifications of it, which is the potential for injury and whether it's acute or overuse or both.
Mm-hmm. I know this isn't it's not orthopedic as such, but it did come out yesterday. The NFL did say that there was a decrease in concussions at a historical low, 17% reduction compared to the 2023 season. And obviously been a topic in the NFL for years. And we see the Guardian caps now, even within games and such. So I don't know if it's just because of the Guardian caps and that, but I mean, when you hear 17% reduction, that's a big jump.
Yeah, that is good. It's a great trend to see. I mean, I think that was, you go back 5 to 10 years, when concussions were really starting to become more in the forefront. I think that really was threatening the livelihood of tackle football. I mean, there was a lot of parents that were nervous about getting their kids in football. There's been a number of strides. I mean, do I think the Guardian cap helps? Yes. Do I think there's a number of other things? Yes. I think honestly, awareness is probably one of the biggest things where people are being more honest if they have issues. They're taking themselves out. I mean, there was, I guess kind of like a load management discussion in basketball. I think when we were younger, there was a bit of a like, you got to be a tough guy and just go back out there. I just got my bell rung, or I just blacked out for a second. I mean, that's people just used to play through that. Right?
Yeah.
Smelling salts to wake yourself back up. I mean, that's when you think about it, you're like, the brain is part of the body. I mean, that's what you're into the brain. That's what a concussion is. It's a traumatic brain injury. And so if you take them seriously, just like an injury to the hamstring or ACL or whatever else, you can recover from it, but you have to treat it appropriately. And I think the appropriate treatment and recognition is really what's driving that. So it's great to see trends like that, and I think it will continue to. At the end of the day, all sports, there's always the potential for collision. So we see concussions in soccer, basketball, football, hockey. I mean, you name it, any sport where people are moving around, they can bang heads. So we're never going to be able to escape it. But again, appropriate recognition and treatment has really kind of changed the outlook on those. And I think it'll continue to go in that direction.
Yeah. And I was reading a little bit too from their, from the NFL, NFL.com. They're, kind of still going to look at that drop hip tackle that we've talked about quite a bit there too. And that's one I'm not, how are they going to, you're telling somebody to completely change their tackling form at the pro level already.
Well, I mean, not only that, it's the challenges. Okay, so if you're coming from behind, like, what do you do then? I mean, they're grabbing, and if you try to stop them, and if you're coming from behind, you can't just like plant your feet. You have to literally use your weight to try to drag them down. That carries your momentum forward. So it's not like the guys are intentionally sliding and dropping on their hip. I mean, that's what it's called, right? It's the hip drop tackle.
Hip drop, yep.
It's not like they're not trying to do that. It's the physics of it. A guy's running away, you grab him, your weight gets pulled, it swings your weight underneath him, your hips are at the level of their ankles, and you drop on them. I mean, so I don't know. It is hard. I mean, if you think there's a way you can try to keep them safer, I'm all for it. But there's some ones where you're just like, I don't know. That being said, I mean, I think a lot of people in the horse collar tackle with illegal people are like, well, all we're doing is grabbing them and pulling them down. And then now people just don't do it very often. I mean, you don't see those fouls as much as used because people just know you can't do it. So maybe people will be able to adapt. At the end of the day, you cannot legislate away all injuries. So, but if you do see something that's egregious, it does certainly draw attention. I think it's one of those things where you saw a couple, star players get injured. I mean, let's be honest. That's why the horse collar tackle, because it was Terrell Owens.
Oh yeah,
McNabb. So McNabb and Owens both broke their ankles on horse collar tackles. In the next year, that's when the rule came out. So when you have star athletes get injured, I think that certainly raises the awareness at the higher level. Say, hey, maybe we need to do something about it. So there's a number of guys that have had injuries with the hip drop tackle. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens, and I think maybe players can adapt. But that one's going to be a tricky one because it's really going to be a challenge for tacklers coming from behind. I mean, I guess you have to just try dive and grab their ankles maybe, but that doesn't make the ankles impervious to injury either. So I don't know. It's can be tricky.
Maybe that's why Patrick Mahomes gets all the calls on the sidelines and such.
Oh man, yeah, it's that's one thing. I don't know how you legislate that away either. I mean, this whole fake slide, not going out of bounds, and look, I get it. We have to protect quarterbacks to a certain degree, but I think once you're a runner, it's like you're a runner. I mean, if you're going to pull up on the sidelines, just light them up, and it's just part of the game. To me, you can't create this special rule for those guys. If they're in the pocket, sure. But if you're running down the sidelines, you're a runner. I don't know. I don't like that. But I understand they're the, $100 million investment or more. They're now going like $300 million investment.
Yeah.
It's getting crazy.
Really quick, we had a question from John. So concussion protocol has come a long way the last 5 years. This is great for all athletes, especially young, and youth prevention is key. My daughter is a fast pitch softball pitcher that has pitched thousands of pitches with zero arm issues. I would love to know from Dr. Crow what the huge differences are between the two pitches. I think we kind of touched on that before, but a good question. I'm assuming when he says the two pitches, probably overhand compared to underhand.
Yeah. Correct. Underhand and overhand. So, yeah, there's been a number of studies that look at this. So the injury rate is much lower. So the mechanics of an underhand throw, the arm stays more in line. So if you do a slow motion of someone throwing underhand, the arm comes in more of a straight line. So the torque and the leverage goes basically straight through the joint. Whereas a throw overhand, your arm's at a 90-degree angle. So you're torquing through the elbow, which places the load on the UCL. So there's no question the forces, they're not necessarily harder. I mean, underhand throwers, man, they can whip a ball pretty dang hard. It's the direction that it goes through the joint. So, if you watch a slow motion video, again, it's coming more in line with the arm as opposed to an overhand where you're going to be putting it kind of a cross angle at the elbow, and that puts the torque on that UCL. So that's the big difference. Now, you can certainly get injuries, and underhand throwers, they tend to get like biceps tendonitis and rotator cuff tendonitis because they're putting a ton of torque through the shoulder to get the pitch through. But luckily, I mean, geez, I'm trying to think of the last elbow I've seen on a softball thrower or pitcher. I mean, it's just not common, which is good for them. So it just has to do with the mechanics of the throw.
Good stuff. He's Dr. Austin Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. All right, I'm giving you a week to think about your Super Bowl pick coming up for next week. So that's your homework assignment for the next few days. Okay, bud?
That's I mean, could it be a tie where no one wins?
Yeah,
I don't know. That's where I'm sitting.
maybe I'll have you analyze the Puppy Bowl then next week or something.
That's right, yeah. Or maybe like a write-in, like the Vikings.
Oh, there you go. Dude, appreciate it. Have a good weekend, and we'll catch up soon. Okay, bud?
Absolutely. Take care.
You got it. Dr. Crow, Chippewa Valley Orthopedics and sports medicine. I shut my mic off there for a second, Brandon. I'm kind of a rookie here. Really quick break, and we'll get Brandon in here. We'll talk some sports coming up after this quick break. Big thanks again for Dr. Crow for joining us here this morning. Don't forget, you can, if you missed any portions of the conversations with Dr. Crow, they are available in podcast form, which you can check out through the Man Cave podcast. And if you want, last week's top 5 plus is still up there too, where Brandon and I drafted our top duos. So we got to think of another top 5 coming up here. I was trying to think last night for a hot minute and couldn't think of one off the top of my head. So we'll get there, though. Good morning, buddy. How are you?
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm doing okay.
Doing okay?
Yeah.
So I do want to talk some baseball here with you for a minute. So I know it's, we're less than 2 weeks away, by the way, for pitchers and catchers reporting, which is, all right, baseball season's kind of coming up here a little bit. But, MLB Network has done their top 10 list, which we've talked a little bit about here. Brewers are so close to being the only team with 2 players, by the way, listed at number 1. I say we count half because it was Devin Williams for a closer and then William Contreras. But now it's the Yankees as the only one with 2. They didn't do DH, which Dodgers probably would have had Ohtani, I would assume, and Freeman was 1, so Dodgers would have been on there. But 2 Brewers showed up at left field. Christian Yelich was number 4, and they have all these analytics that they did it for, and Jackson Chourio at number 7. So we've talked a little bit about this, how the outfield is going to shape up, and odds are it's probably all going to work out, injuries, off days, whatever, that sort of thing. But if you had to pick between the 2 who you'd like to see spend more time in left field, Chourio or Yelich?
Chourio.
Is it just because you want, like I said, I want him to continue to get better and more experience out there? Is that part of it?
I think he's a better defender at this stage of the game.
Than Yelich?
Yes.
Okay.
Plus, with since we still don't entirely know how the whole back situation is going to work with Yelich coming off the surgery. I know Christian in the past has said he likes to be out there. He doesn't necessarily like the DH, but it might be. I mean, you'll be able to kind of work everybody in, but still, like, it's almost until you know a little bit more. It's kind of some preventive maintenance almost.
Now, I think the easy solution that a lot of people have will be we'll move him to first. That seems to be the easy one for a lot of people out there. But it's not that easy with a guy like Yelich.
I mean, that was the Ryan Braun thing for many years.
At least he had experience in the infield, though, right?
Yeah, he was a third baseman too,
Right.
and I think he played like shortstop in college or something.
Yeah.
But also the thing too is, like, when you're playing first base, like, you're still kind of jostling yourself. You're going down for balls, you're bopping around. Like, it's not like that's a super great spot for your back. Like, I get, in a perfect world, that's what you could do. Because then obviously the Brewers have plenty of outfield depth where you can, my goodness, if you're every day, health willing, you have some combination of Churio, Mitchell, Perkins, and Frelick, and as your three outfielders, like, you're in pretty good shape, especially defensively.
Yeah.
But I think that's just one of those things that's kind of easier said than done. Even though in some ways, Yelich could make it, kind of maybe a first base could be a good spot for him. That's just not an easy thing to do.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I think that's the easy solution for Bryce Harper, moved to first, but he was catcher, I think, as a prospect, then outfield, and then moved over to first in that too. It's just, and maybe Yelich has had experience, so I don't know, but I don't think it's as easy as just saying
you're a first baseman now
over there.
Right.
I mean, it's the Moneyball quote, right? Ron, tell them how easy it is to play first.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard.
It's incredibly hard to play first base.
If Chris Pratt could do it.
If Chris Pratt could do it, if Brad Pitt says it's easy, then there you go. I want to ask you a question that Hudson's been asking me like almost every other day. Who's playing shortstop? And if it is Ortiz, then who's playing third?
It's a great question. Those are great questions. Your kid's asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And the answer is I'm not entirely sure.
Do you feel like, because there's still some infielders out there, right?
There are. And remember back at the start of the offseason when I did my, offseason exercise, like, I didn't exactly think the Brewers would throw a lot at third base. I went a couple veteran route, that they could still do that. Like Jose Iglesias is still out there. Like, he would be, I think, a good kind of high floor guy. And maybe we know the Brewers, there's always going to be that kind of, payroll thing we got to keep an eye on, but they've also got some minor leaguers that are starting to reach the upper level. So maybe you don't want to commit long. You got some guys that you really like that maybe are a year or two away, but still, right now it's a glaring weakness. Assuming Joey Ortiz moves to short, which I think is the right move. I think kind of that's the move they're thinking. I think his bat profile is better at shortstop than at third base. Shortstop's generally a more defensive focused position. Obviously, the last several years, the Brewers and the fans have kind of been a little bit spoiled with Willie Adames there.
Yeah.
But his bat and what he can bring to the table, I think profile is better at shortstop. Plus, I just like the idea of having that consistent everyday combo up the middle.
Yeah.
Just for chemistry's sake and all that good stuff with him and Bryce Terang at second. So, but yeah, right now, if the season started today, and of course it doesn't, and the Brewers are always willing to, wait a little bit before they make their move, the third baseman is going to be some combination of Caleb Durbin,
Tyler Black.
It doesn't sound like it. It doesn't sound like he's got the arm for it.
Okay.
I think he's more in the mix to play at first base. Probably Caleb Durbin, Oliver Dunn, Andrew Monasterio, which doesn't, no disrespect to any of those guys, but Durbin was, one piece, the other piece in the Devin Williams trade.
Right.
Obviously, Oliver Dunn, we saw points last year, and Andrew Monasterio has been a utility guy for the team the last couple of years, but none of those guys are have really done much yet to kind of solidify that. Hey, that's that solidify that confidence, I think, among fans. It might be a different story within the organization, but certainly on the outside looking in right now, that's kind of that's a glaring thing to see right now.
Right. Is So two-part, I'll ask this one first. Because of the lack of movement so far, or the players that they've gotten in return, like for, Devin Williams and such, is this a team that is just kind of focused on the youth movement right now? And because, Willie Damas is gone, Devin Williams is gone, Ortiz is going over there, maybe a younger third baseman coming in, as you mentioned. Is it, and we know about the outfielders, yes, Contreras and Reese Hoskins and Yelich are up there, but Contreras is still fairly young at this point. Is it more of a youth movement at this point? Is this, how do you make what's going on with this roster construction right now?
I think they want to give their young guys a chance to play, but I also think that if the opportunity strikes, they would still be willing to bring in a veteran somehow.
Because they didn't bring back Wade Miley, which I think some people are like, you couldn't give him a minor league deal?
Right.
Because he went to the Reds on a minor league deal.
But I also think that they like their starting pitching group. And generally I've learned, especially over the last couple of years, that I'm gonna more so give the team the benefit of the doubt when it comes to pitching, especially out of the bullpen.
As long as you still have Chris Hook on the roster.
Right.
And
staff. And just kind of the infrastructure they have in place in general. But that these are the questions that these are questions that are going to get asked.
Yeah.
And I think if you're the Brewers and your ownership and your management and your whoever, you understand that. And there's reasons that Brewers fans are asking these questions. This is a team that it lost its whether who you would consider to be the quote unquote best hitter is kind of up for debate. There's a couple of ways you can look at it, but I don't think anyone deny that Willie Damas is a very important person, not just when it comes to his offense and playing solid defense, even if his metrics fell off a little bit last year defensively, but just the leadership also as well. He was someone that people really valued,
right? And
how that all works out. Now some of that I think you can make up for just by younger players improving. You're not going to make it all up because, maybe Garrett Mitchell plays 120 games or, Jackson Churio takes a step forward or, Sal Frelick or Bryce Trang take another step forward, whatever the case is. But it still would just be nice to see them do something because so far obviously the big thing they've done is the Devin Williams trade.
Right.
And that's really it. They've signed 2 players to major league deals, but it's less than $1 million.
Right.
It's just, I'm not a believer in the idea that an organization needs to do something, for fans to get excited. And at this point, I do think this team in many ways has earned the benefit of the doubt. But, as spring training is only a few weeks away and, those names I mentioned earlier are kind of slated to start at third base, I don't blame anybody for that position if you're a little bit less than stoked.
You mentioned one player, with Willie Adames, you lose some power, you lose some pop in the middle of that lineup. Is that guy that either has to or potentially could fill that is Garrett Mitchell? Last year we saw him, Brewers gave him a shot many times batting in that third spot, towards the top half of the lineup. And I guess maybe the question is he that candidate for breakout player for the Brewers? And he's been dealt with injuries that, have kind of slowed down his career a little bit. But is he that guy, if you had to pick somebody on the roster right now to kind of maybe fill that void? Because it's fair to say he's got more power than Sal Frelick, right? He's got more power.
Fair to say.
Okay. But is he that guy that
could be?
They're hoping that kind of takes that step.
For him, I think the thing is, you mentioned the injury concerns. He's struggled to stay healthy. And if he played 130, 140 games, where maybe there is an IL stint in there at some point, I would love to see what it looks like, because I've been someone that's been a little bit down on Garrett Mitchell, but it's been for that reason. When he's produced at the major league level, I've been impressed with how he's been able to kind of cut down on his strikeouts. From when in 2022 when he played at the end of the year to last year, he's cut his strikeout rate down by 10%, which is a lot. To get it down to that upper 30% range, which is still high, but it's doable. It's always kind of I kind of reference it as kind of walking that Keston Hiura line. The thing I always said about Keston Hiura is if he struck out 30% of the time, he could have been a superstar, but he couldn't. It was 40%, and that's a big difference. So you're going to get the defense there. There's speed, there's power. He's patient. There's there's a lot of things I like with Garrett Mitchell. That's why he was a first-round pick, and honestly, he kind of went a little lower than many people thought when the Brewers drafted him.
Mm-hmm.
But he's just got to be able to stay on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like it's always been something different. It's not like it's a recurring same injury over and over.
Right.
It's just been kind of, one time it's this, one time it's that.
Gets hit in the finger and it's a broken finger.
Right.
And
stuff like that. Like that's just stuff that happens.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd just like to see what he could do over the course of a year if he got a chance to, be out there every day.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, if he can, he's someone that I would definitely have out there every day.
Is the expectation for Jackson Churio to be a 30-30 player this year? Because that's some of the projections.
Yeah,
that
I mean
that's out there.
I mean,
I know last year we did our preseason picks, and I think one of them was like, who's going to be the most disappointing?
Right.
And I said Churio, just because I think a lot of people had such high expectations. Well, started off slow, but then he probably surpassed that.
Yeah,
so are we going to have too high this year for year 2 for Jackson Churio?
Right. Like, you got to remember, he's still going to be 21 playing in the majors at a time when most guys are playing like AA ball.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be, I think, something out there, but it's also, I mean, as much as you kind of want to go gung ho and say like, okay, this guy, he could be the guy, and like he very well could, but like you still want to make sure you're not kind of getting too far out in front of your skis,
mm-hmm.
And more so because you just want to be patient with him. Like if he comes out and it's a struggle a little bit more this year, you don't want to suddenly just kind of be like, he's a bum, because
mm-hmm.
He's a 21-year-old playing at the majors, and baseball's all about adjustments. He made very good adjustments after the first couple months last year. Well, now teams are going to make adjustments to him.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the chess match of, okay, you adjust, I adjust, you adjust, I adjust, and we'll see. But obviously at this point, what he could potentially do is going to loom very large, and ultimately how good this Brewers team is. If he continues that upward trajectory, then that can help make up for some of the losses that maybe the team hasn't entirely addressed to our satisfaction yet.
Mm-hmm. I know. I think it was it Ken Rosenthal or Jason Stark, or maybe they were on the podcast, or it was their podcast, and I saw it scrolling through the X the other day, and I've seen it a couple times now. But the question that is, and I blame the Dodgers for this, but the question that's coming through now is, does baseball need a salary cap? Now you got national writers throwing that out there, and I know they've got labor deals coming up in a year, a couple of years, or something like that.
A couple of years.
But I still struggle to see them agreeing to a salary cap, Brandon.
Maybe it was MLB Trade Rumors. I forget where, but someone had posted a very interesting poll question, and maybe it was after 2026 was when the labor deal expired. But the question was, as a baseball fan, would you take a salary cap if it meant a year of a lockout? So say it's before 20, would you give up 2027 of a baseball season for there ultimately to be some sort of salary cap and floor? Like I think both things would need to be in there to make sure these owners are spending.
Yeah.
And the result, I think, was like 2/3 people said yes.
Wow. So they would sacrifice a whole year of baseball.
Right, yeah. Would you say there's no 2027 baseball season if it meant they figured it out and came back in 2028 with a cap?
Yeah.
And that's I think it would take something like that for it to happen, because as you said, I don't think the players union is going to be in any hurry to give it up, because you're limiting earning power.
Mm-hmm.
And, I had seen, and I thought it was interesting, but, some talk about maybe, trying to move closer to a kind of what the NBA does. And I never really understood why the NBA did it until I saw it explained, where you look at the NBA and some of their big contracts, obviously they have, limits.
Yep.
You always hear the max, the super max, stuff like that.
Yep.
And their contracts, I don't think, run any longer than like 5 years, is it? And there's a reason for that, because they want to make sure that organizations aren't necessarily hamstrung if you sign, player X to a max deal, and a year or two into it, that player obviously falls off. Like you don't want a team that just is kind of toast for 5 years because they're paying John Wall $45 million or whatever it is. So it's tough, because like I'm a believer, like players should be able to get, like if someone's going to pay you $750 million, then that's what you're worth. Like that's the market.
Right.
But
don't apologize for it.
Right. But at the same time, like, we are fans of smaller market teams.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I think this is like there's layers to this. But at the same time, there's also owners that, I do believe, and I think Milwaukee's one of them, could spend more money than they do. Like, it annoys me when I see so many owners crying poor. But yet, the thing I think we know about a lot of these owners is they're very successful business people.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, what makes very successful business people is they have good business sense. If they owned a sports franchise and that team was not making them money, they would sell that sports franchise. These owners who are saying they're not making very much money are not exactly in a big hurry to sell the team that they're not making very much money on. Why is that?
Yeah.
Probably because they're making more money than they're leading on, because they're not going to come out and say, yeah, we only had a $90 million payroll. We won 73 games, but hey, I made a bunch of money this year, so be happy for me.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Now, I know like the NFL changed this because now you can, and I don't know the proper term, but it's like you can have like these investment groups be like a 10%
Right,
holder in
yeah,
that
and-
because the values were getting so high.
Right.
I don't know if baseball does that or if they could do that
And I
sort
would
of
like-
thing.
And that's like, I always get nervous with those
Mm-hmm.
because obviously it's definitely all about maximizing profits, because that's what they're investing to make money.
Right.
Like if you're a team owner or something, like, yeah, you're making money, but at the same time, there's also part of you that's like, okay, I also want to win,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure with those investment, I'm trying to think of the proper term for it, because venture capitalists.
Yes.
We've seen it so much in other walks of life, and I don't think it's been good for those things. I mean, I can kind of look at my line of work and and speak to that in some cases, but that just worries me, because then you're really bringing in people that are prioritizing, okay, what's it going to take for us to maximize how much money we make? And that could not necessarily be a good thing for your on the field competitive product.
Right. No, I'm very curious. Yeah, because it expires December 1st, 2026.
Okay, so that's because I think it was 2022 when
The poll question was out
no.
there?
I mean, I think it was 2022 when they signed the new one.
Oh, yeah.
Because remember,
yeah.
the start of this season got moved back a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that was 2022. So that would make sense. 2, 3, 4, that 5-year deal.
Well, and then like the COVID year, they were trying to figure out
right,
stuff,
and that one I think they just bumped everything back. And but I mean, that's there's just a lot of things that are going to come to a head at one point. It's something,
if there's one league and players union that I have the least amount of confidence in that they can agree to something right away is probably baseball.
Yes, because within recent history here, we've already seen that. I mean,
NFL's gotten better since that 2011.
They have, and I think they also all realize, like, hey, things are going so darn well right now. Like, let's just not mess this up.
Right.
Because, I mean, you can look back at baseball 94. I mean, that was a big time detriment to the sport that in some ways it hasn't recovered from. I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, you look at the popularity of baseball in the 70s, the 80s, into the 90s, it was significant. And there was just a lot of people that, that hit them really hard, and they haven't come back, or it's just not the same for them.
Right. Even hockey's gotten better with Garrett Bettman a little bit with negotiations.
Yeah, I mean, they've had plenty of practice. I mean, with a couple of their lockouts, but it just feels to me like there's gonna be a significant moment of coming, a lot of things coming to a head, and I don't know, what that looks like.
Well, hopefully you and I are still doing this so we could talk about, because I got a feeling there's gonna be a lot of things to talk about at that point.
I think so.
It's gonna be interesting. All right, we got to take a break and then we'll finish up the second hour. Don't forget, you could join in on the convo. Hit us up with some texts or comment on the video streams, all that good stuff. We'll be back in just a few minutes. We just got about 7 minutes to the top of the hour. So coming up next hour, we'll do a little cream of the crop to kick it off. Then we've got some local sports roundup. We will hit up, recap, preview some of the latest in local sports. So we got that. Before then, though, as we finish up the second hour, hoops wise, the Bucks are back in action tonight. We are now less than a week away from the NBA trade deadline. So, Brandon, when you're in next week, we potentially could be talking about some new players for the Bucks in that. Obviously, rumors are running rampant when it comes to this Bucks team, whether it's Butler, whether it's Zach LaVine or Bradley Beal for a hot minute and such. But let me just put it this way, without maybe trying to figure out, who we want or if there's a player out there. Would you be willing to? I think some people are kind of, just say, well, if it's Chris Middleton for Zach LaVine, yes, do it, that sort of thing. But if it costs Bobby Portis too, then are you willing to make a move? If it costs to bring in a player, whoever it is, but you would have to send Middleton and Portis, would you be okay with that?
Depending on the player, I think I would.
Okay.
It's just kind of the cost of doing business.
Yeah.
And, they're at some point they're going to have to, you might have to take that big swing. And obviously part of that was, getting Dame. And, so much of this equation comes down to, the team being healthy at the postseason, because that just hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on who, I think in the right situation, you could do that.
Mm-hmm. The only part that I would be nervous about then is, like, if you move on from him, what about your front court depth a little bit there, especially like defensively?
Right. And maybe that's that's another move where, you need to bring in another, guy that can play bigger and, come off the bench.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's something that if you would trade away Bobby Portis, you need to find a way to get that back somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's through a trade, maybe that's through the buyout, the buyout market that comes out, usually after the deadline, you see veterans floating out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you're right. Ultimately, that's going to have to be addressed some way if that's something they do.
Right. And I guess, if I had to put a percentage on how do I think the Bucks are going to make a major move, and by major, it's like the big names that are for, I'm pretty low right now on that confidence level, because I still question whether Giannis will approve if they trade Middleton or not. I still question whether he would be in favor of that.
Right.
And I think that's something that some people are not talking about right now.
Yeah.
Because they're not trading Middleton without Giannis's approval. Right? We all know that, right? That's unless you potentially want to piss him off.
And it's one of those things where, like, I go back to the Lillard trade where the Bucks made sure that there was no blowback on Giannis for that deal. But at the same, basically Giannis, didn't say, hey, we got to trade Drew Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I believe they would have went to him and said, hey, we're looking to do this. We'll keep your name out of this. Even if I'm not saying Giannis said, like, hey, do this, but like, you're going to ask your star player, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to do it without him knowing.
Right.
They just made sure that, he didn't get, any of the potential, kind of blowback on it.
Right. And
but to me, it's a little bit different with Middleton because there's just more of a history there.
Yeah. Dude was Giannis's best man at his wedding. We know how close he is with his brother. That's how close he is with Middleton. And if there's one thing we know, Giannis is very
loyal
to a lot. And whether that's a positive or negative when it comes to stuff like this, it's just, it's the nature of the beast at this point.
This is a situation where maybe some people might not view it as a positive. I think overall I view it as a positive just because I think that's a good quality to have. But also, Giannis being loyal is a big reason he's still in Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Very well put. So I'm at like a 25%.
I don't know. I don't know.
I know you got all these other reports out there saying they're active, like they're really trying.
I believe that. I believe they're out there talking.
Yeah. It's just, I question whether they're going to actually be able to pull the trigger and get something done.
I agree.
So, and the thing is too, you look at some of the numbers, they've actually been playing really good defense.
They've been one of the best defense teams in the league over a pretty large sample size. Obviously you can't just ignore the start.
Right.
But looking back at, the 3 quarters of the year, like it's a team that's been consistently just kind of moving up.
Mm-hmm. So, that was obviously an issue last year with the team defense. And this year, at least it's looking a lot better. So maybe it's just kind of finally starting to, and I think you do have to factor in chemistry with this too.
Yeah.
But ultimately, outside the Giannis one, I think the other big question is like you have to ask yourself, okay, can we beat Boston, Cleveland, and the Knicks in a 7-game series? And I don't think they can. If they don't think they can, then I think that's like, okay, then we have to figure out a way to make a move so that we can answer that question to a yes or change
Right.
that
This is
question to
a
a yes.
this is a team that is built with the idea of trying to win the whole thing. Like getting to the second round doesn't get the job done.
Right. Right. So, all right. We only got about a minute and a half here. So again, coming up next hour, we'll kick it off with a little cream of the crop. And then we'll do some local sports roundup. And we'll get to that. We'll get back to a little bit more football talk coming up here too.
Pro Bowl breakdowns.
The helmet harmony game last night.
I saw the video while I was working of Sam Darnold throwing at the big squares.
Did you?
I did.
Okay. I think Jared Goff won
Yeah,
that one.
I think he did. Goff had the highest score when Darnold was up, and Darnold didn't
Okay.
beat him, so that makes sense.
So I was just walking back and forth because Hudson was watching it. I almost wanted to ask Dr. Crow this. They had this game. It was mostly linemen, but George Kittle did it. Whoever could spike the ball the
I saw
hardest.
that.
And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, if there's a team doc watching this, please don't throw your shoulder out doing this, you guys.
Right.
And it's like, I'm assuming it was like a PSI type of pressure
Yeah.
sort of thing on there. So it was mostly linemen doing this, but I did see Kittle go on there and do it. I'm like, I'm just waiting for somebody to throw their arm out.
I
And
should have
then
had Gronk come in there for a celebrity spike.
Right. Terry Crews, I don't know about the hosting part. He was a little
shaky?
A little shaky.
Yeah.
A little shaky. But yeah, they did Helmet Harmony was a trivia, like how it was like the wedding game. How well do you know? I think the NFC got every single question right. Even Xavier and Rashawn Gary were on there. They had to answer 3 and they got it all right. So kind of weird. But it's for the kids, right?
Yeah.
That's why I keep telling myself.
That's a very good way to put it.
Yep, it's for the kids. So don't get bent out of shape if you're an adult about the Pro Bowl games because the youngsters love it. So, all right. And you'd probably be more pissed if one of your players got hurt in a stupid meaningless game.
Nobody wants a Robert Edwards situation.
Yep. Final hour on this Friday morning. Big thanks for tuning in, broadcasting from the Sports Talk Studios. We've got some local sports roundup coming up here in just a little bit. It's brought to you by Carpet City Flooring Center. So we'll recap and preview the latest going on in the local sports world. Before we get to that, though, Brandon and I, it's time for a little cream of the crop, dude. All right, sir. I'll start it off with you, give you the honors. Who is your cream of the crop?
I am going to go with Andy Reid.
Mm.
I mean, another year, kind of the Chiefs and the Eagles, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, a little bit more coming up in the rest of the hour. But like,
yuck.
It's one of those things where like neither team was particularly impressive, especially at times in the postseason, but they kind of were when they had to.
Mm-hmm.
And like at this point, like I know that especially these days, there's such a stigma around like coaches getting a second opportunity. And Andy Reid, I mean, obviously Bill Belichick was one too, but like Andy Reid is definitely like the modern example of like not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And like just
heck, even Pete Carroll.
We'll see how that goes. But
this is his third or fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for him to just continue it, like, and have a chance to, be the first coach or the first team ever to win 3 in a row, like, there's the Super Bowl era.
Yeah.
I mean,
Green Bay's done it twice, just championships.
Gotcha,
Super Bowl.
Gotcha.
It's an argument point amongst Packers fans this week. They're getting tired of it.
Between then, Bill Belichick bringing up the
God,
trophy,
yeah.
my gosh.
It's like, get our dukes up right now. Let's go here. So,
but yeah, I'll go with Mr. Reid.
The thing is, I 100% have Chiefs fatigue, but I love Andy Reid.
Yes. Yeah.
So I like anything else and it's complete jealousy. It's complete fatigue. If this was my favorite team, I'd be, screw all of you.
Yeah, you would embrace being the heel in this spot.
Yes.
Which, I know people that are Chiefs fans and they do, and I don't blame them.
Yeah. I don't either. I'd rather be in that position as a fan right now. So the only thing that I'm very, very much not looking forward to is if the Chiefs do win. I already know it's going to happen. Kelsey's going to go up there and do what he did last year. Nobody believed in us this year. or like, nobody thought we could do it. Or nobody don't switch it around and say just nobody wanted you to do it. Then that's fine. So,
right.
But I'm waiting because he did that last year. And I'm like, really? Really?
It was like when Georgia won.
And Kirby. Kirby Smart.
Yeah, it's like you would
team.
Yeah. And that's something I've always appreciated about athletes is like you really have like the way like I'm a firm believer that the best motivator in your life is yourself.
Yeah.
And obviously sometimes some athletes, we heard this obviously with Michael Jordan too, like you kind of have to tell yourself things that maybe aren't true to get yourself to get to a certain level.
Yep.
And yes,
watch The Last Dance.
Yes.
There's a certain player that you use he just used as his fuel. That was
well, how many times just in that series did you hear him literally say the phrase, and I took that personally?
Yeah.
be it a legitimate slight or in many times not.
Yeah. I mean, it's a popular GIF, meme, whatever.
Yeah. That's how high level athletes operate.
Who was that player that remember because you just
played
watched
for Washington.
Yeah.
He had where
one night it was like a back-to-back.
He had a good game and Jordan had made up that the guy had said something to after the game. He said good game, Mike.
Yeah.
And then Jordan came back the next day and just obliterated the guy and found out after the fact the guy never said that. Jordan just said that.
Manifested it
to get himself going.
Yeah. Isn't that just unbelievable that you can do that like that? It's to the point where it's like you could be that you can make yourself believe that.
Right.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
So my cream of the crop. So I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier this week, but I'm going a little bit of a different route. I might be doubling up on here on Stock Reports. The TGL though, the golf league with Tiger Woods, that thing that, even your mom, Brandon, texted me the next morning and asked if I had watched it because she was watching it. And so it's been, I think Arrow's trending upward in that thing. It's getting better. I've heard positive reviews. I've seen it a little bit. So I think they hit something here. cream of the crop right now. Is that have you watched any of it?
I haven't, but I've
Okay.
also because usually it's what, Tuesday nights.
Yes.
And I'm working Tuesday nights, so I just haven't been able to sit down and watch it. So
Interesting. Yeah, it's
but
good.
I mean, I've heard good things.
Yeah. So, by the way, just this was interesting. So, in the first hour, we were talking about some position coaches in Green Bay and such. I just saw this. This was actually from in the overnight. Tom Silverstein said Anthony Campanelli, who is now the defense coordinator with Jaguars, Packers linebackers coach this past year, had options. He turned down an offer to become Penn State's defensive coordinator, and he would have been San Francisco's defensive coordinator if Robert Saleh hadn't agreed. So interesting. So it sounded like he was on his way out. I got to imagine then Matt LaFleur and Green Bay knew this would probably happen.
I feel like you kind of have a sense of like, okay, this, there's some buzz here. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I got to imagine they've already got a list of potential candidates out there. But hey, you guys, did you lose any position coaches? I know you had some guys interview for offensive coordinator and that. But...
there's that, and that's kind of what it's. I mean, barring like Brian Flores getting interviewed for like the Saints, which that doesn't sound like.
Yeah. But even like, didn't you have somebody?
Durante Jones interviewed for a couple of D coordinator jobs, including with Jacksonville, and Greg Udinsky, who's a kind of a young wunderkind on the offensive staff, has interviewed for several offensive coordinator spots. But so far, nothing there. But that's kind of been the the gist of it so far.
Yeah. So, but it seems like Kellen Moore's going to be the head coach.
That kind
of
of
the Saints
seems how it's trending.
Yeah. So stupid Cowboys. I almost feel a little bit bad. But it's just
my thing. I'm always a little bit. I feel like different than people because like I don't hate the Cowboys, mostly because I have like family and friends that are Cowboys fans. So I get, and they're smart. Like they get it. Like they're just absolutely fed up with Jerry Jones at this point. Like,
yeah,
they're just like, what do you do? Like, because I even had a friend when they got rid of McCarthy. I'm just like, oh, because I know he didn't like McCarthy. So I'm like, oh, congratulations. What are you kind of looking for here? He's like, well, and he had some guys in mind. He's like, yeah. And he initially said like, he's like, yeah, but Jerry being Jerry, it'll probably be like Kellen Moore. And now I think
they would take Kellen Moore over Brian Schottenheimer.
And it's just, I don't know. Like, I just feel like Jerry Jones is in his late Al Davis run, where it was just like, you just look at it and you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, if this was the case, you might as well just kept Mike McCarthy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I saw a headline on there that says, or this morning, that there was a report they hired Schottenheimer to keep Dak Prescott happy. I'm like, well, then you might as well just kept Mike McCarthy.
Because then there were other people like, wasn't Micah Parsons like, why didn't
wanted Mike McCarthy?
Yeah, so why don't you just keep Mike McCarthy then?
So it's like, what?
And if you knew you were gonna, unless there was some sort of breakdown like late in the process between the two,
and McCarthy just wanted out or something, maybe. But
and now obviously we saw he's stepping back and going to focus on next year's hiring cycle.
So I wonder if he's going to live in Green Bay for the year, back at his house with the Beat Laboratory that he built over there. No, I just
that is why, like, I do feel bad for Cowboys fans because when you see your owner and you just know, like, what are you doing? Like, there's just so many unforced errors because you have somebody that has had success in the past. And look, in part because they made good decisions, but also in part because of the other people making good decisions. I brought this up before, like, Georgia, going back to, post Jimmy Johnson, they won the Super Bowl the next year. Barry Switzer did with Jimmy's team.
Yeah.
And obviously there's been good years in there too, but like, again, the stat that, they're the longest
30 years.
Yeah. They're the last NFC team to play in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Like they had the
longest drought. Yeah.
Like at some point, if you got to look.
That's America's team, man.
And then it's like, well, what's going to happen when Jerry's done? Well, it's probably just going to get taken over by his kid. Like, as much
who doesn't know how to use air quotes properly.
As much as this has been it's been fun for the memes this week.
Yeah.
With that, especially the Office ones. There's been some really good ones from the Office.
Well, I feel bad for Schottenheimer too, because in that presser,
you're putting him in a tough spot.
Well, and when you have the owner saying, yeah, this is a risky hire, no head, and the guy sitting right, I'm like, thanks for the confidence, boss. It's like, and I don't blame Schottenheimer for I mean,
you get a chance to be. I mean, he's a long time.
His dad's Marty Schottenheimer.
So football family, like longtime coach, like,
Yeah.
and he's just someone that you've never really heard connected to like head coaching opportunities.
I mean, I think he obviously was coordinator for Pete Carroll and that, but I think he really came to see when he was with Rex Ryan with the Jets, and they just ran the ball a ton when he was the offensive coordinator back there. So it's
interesting. Like, it's one of those things where, like, obviously our teams are in different spots when it comes to ownership, but I feel like in both cases, like, the infrastructure they have, I would consider to be one that you can have faith in.
Well, that's like, was it during the end of the Aaron Rodgers one, the whole narrative around Green Bay was like, well, if they had an owner, then that owner would make sure to surround Aaron with talent and all that.
Right. Or
okay. But then look at this example.
Yeah, how would that work? But that's it. Like, both of us can look at our teams and be like, okay, but at least it's not some sort of eclectic owner that's kind of, maybe overstepping his bounds because he thinks he knows more than he does at this stage of the game.
Right.
For the Vikings, the Wolves are pretty hands off. They don't like the spotlight. They just kind of go about their business. Obviously, Green Bay, it's a unique situation.
Let your football people do the football stuff.
Yeah, just let the football people do the football people and make a bunch of money. And just try to find the right football people for the job. Doesn't always happen, but like, don't have your kid making decisions in the locker room and talking about Madden ratings, or it's one of those things. You just look around the league and you see so many, and just in sports in general, you see so many toxic ownership groups that you're just like, hey, we're not one of them. Yeah. Like, you just feel good because, like, hey, we're not the doorknobs.
Right. I completely agree with you. Completely agree. So it's like, yeah, we may complain once in a while about here or there, but boy,
it could be a heck of a lot worse.
And that's where I look at, the whole new president coming in for Green Bay policy on that. I think a lot of people are, and I know there's some talk like, is he going to keep the current structure where like the GM and the coach all report to him like they do for I don't think that's his biggest priority, to be honest with you. To me, I view the president, CEO of Green Bay as like the guy that makes the money. Title town, all that.
Yeah, you're the CEO. There's a lot you have to account for. It's not simply football on the field product.
Right. Just Goody, Russ Ball are your football guys in the front office. LaFleur are your coaching staff. Don't get all hands-on in and such. That's why I'm perfectly fine that they promoted from within somebody who's been with the Packers organization for how many years, and I know some people are like, ooh, maybe he wants to put his own mark on there. Let's stop. Chill out for a bit on that. So I just can't wait though for Mark Murphy's retirement party, the NFL draft. So
Mark, if you're listening, and I know that there's like a 70% chance you are, we want to go down the sledding hill with you for the draft.
Yes. I wonder.
We want to do that.
I wonder.
So have your people call our people, and our people are Dan. So
I have his people's number. Actually.
Hey, there we go. Let's get that set up.
So I'll have my people, who I don't have any people, call that people. So it'll be me calling that people over there. But let's do a quick break, then we'll do some local sports roundup since we got on a little tangent there. That's okay though. So we'll do that. Quick break, and we'll be back here in just a few minutes. About 8:23 here this morning. Let's do some local sports roundup brought to you by Carpet City Flooring Center here. Catching up on some of the local sports in the 715 area. Let's you want to start off with some hoops? Because
Sure.
did you watch hoops last night?
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
you were out on the road watching some basketball.
Yes, I was in New Auburn for a very important East Lakeland basketball doubleheader with New Auburn hosting Clayton. Clayton swept both the boys and the girls contest. New Auburn, I guess, starting with the boys game, New Auburn came in tied atop the conference with Flambeau. They're half a game back now. Those teams play Tuesday, so New Auburn, a busy week for both the boys and the girls. It was their third game in 4 days, so that's end of a busy week. But on the girls' end of things, Clayton picked up the 36-29 win. Both teams were unbeaten in conference play. So now Clayton's a game up, and they'll meet again at the end of the regular season. So, I mean, tomorrow's calendar turns February,
Yeah.
So that's actually the final full month of like the regular season.
And February's a short month, so there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So no leap year this year.
Yeah. And then was it earlier in the week too? A good one between McDonald and Bloomer.
Yes,
that's
girls basketball on the with Western Clover Belt. McDonald picking up a 75-70 win. Western Clover Belt tonight, actually a big one in girls basketball with Regis and Fall Creek. Those are the top two teams in the conference. They went
rivalry right there.
A little bit. They went right down to the wire last time. I think that obviously that game is going to loom pretty large into who might ultimately grab that conference championship. But yeah, you go back to Tuesday night, McDonald picking up the win over Bloomer. A very fun back and forth game. Two teams that are kind of similar in a different way. They're both younger teams. They got very, I would say, prolific sophomore class, but also upperclassmen that are important to the team too. And they're teams that I think are they've spent the first half of the year. They've got new coaches. You got a lot of younger players that are kind of getting their first significant taste of varsity play. But they're also teams, I think, when push comes to shove here in this final month plus of the season, that you're going to have to keep an eye on, because they both have things they do that could make them very successful in the postseason. With McDonald, they're very athletic and they like to get out and run, and they can force a lot of turnovers. That's kind of how they ended up grabbing the lead for good against Bloomers. Just defensively, they were able to kind of use their athleticism. Big night for Man Sigenthaler with 30 points. And on the Bloomer end of things, they're able to they have depth in their scoring, but they shoot 3-pointers better than pretty much any team you're going to find.
Wow.
They had 13 against against McDonald, sorry, including 7 from sophomore Leah Hartman. So, I mean, these are two teams, I think, that, coming up here, you're going to have to kind of, keep an eye on them. Bloomer in Division 3, McDonald Division 4. And that's going to be kind of interesting to see how that develops here in this final month. But like I said, tonight, that girls game looms very large with the the Ramblers and the Crickets.
BRC
Big
over
Rivers,
there, Big Rivers, kind of Memorial still up there.
Yeah,
too?
Memorial is still kind of controlling the pace in both of those. I got a chance Monday night to see Eau Claire Memorial boys when they played at Chippewa Falls, and I mean that's a state ranked Old Abe's team with under the leadership of Chad Brisky, and you can see why. I mean, they are,
the word I keep hearing about them is fundamental. Would you agree?
They're fundamental, and the thing I noticed with them is they are, I would say, they're very explosive. On first look at when you look at the team, like obviously they have good players and stuff, but they're not the largest team in the world, just size wise. But they had multiple kids that were dunking in that game, so it's like they play bigger than maybe they initially look physically, but like defensively, they were just so like aggressive and on point. Like the really good defensive teams in basketball, like make every pass an offense makes difficult. Like you can't even like reverse the ball around, like, and they force a lot of turnover against the Cardinals, but they're just, you can tell that's something like, it's almost, you almost feel like they, one of those teams where they kind of take it personally if a team scores on them.
Yeah.
And obviously in basketball, it's going to happen, but like they're just so good at, doing that, not allowing teams to go on runs, and obviously that goes a long way towards it. And they've got obviously the top tier talent there as well, but they're still unbeaten in conference play, and that's a team that is in pretty good shape to maybe land a pretty good seed coming up here in the postseason. In a few weeks. They got a big one tonight. They play at New Richmond. New Richmond, another team that's kind of in the top half of the conference. So, and for Oklahoma Memorial, you're kind of looking to just keep notching those conference wins, and eventually you'll kind of get what you're looking for as far as a conference title. But you just gotta kind of be very businesslike. Just kind of go out. Okay, who do we got tonight? Next team up. We just gotta go. Take care of business, and they've been doing that a lot. Winning their first 8 games in conference play.
Yeah. Girls wise for BRC,
Similar story.
Yeah.
You got the you've got the Old Abes up top of the conference. And tonight they will be hosting, they will actually. I'm sorry, they'll be playing at New Richmond as well. As I believe it's a doubleheader.
Okay.
So, but yeah, they're up. They're 9-0. They're 2 games up on both Rice Lake and Hudson.
Okay.
And they're 15-2. I mean, they're another team that's I don't think they're ranked, but they're in that conversation, and they should be in a pretty decent spot come the postseason. But some still big games on the horizon for the Old Abes as well as we kind of look into next week. So you just they've had so much success these last few years, and you kind of see different teams, I would say over the last decade or so, that have kind of had a period where they've kind of been the dominant team in the conference. And right now it's Oklahoma Memorial. I mean, they're beating teams, they're beating teams handedly. And I think as you kind of hit this home stretch here, you're going to really see, they've got big games coming up with Hudson and Rice Lake, as I mentioned, but I think they're, the idea is kind of for them to be kind of at their best. I mean, it's always such a, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. You always hear teams, especially now that we're going to be in February tomorrow, that are going to say, hey, we want to be at our best, for this last month, going into the postseason. And, this is a team that is, lost 1 game since the first game. They lost the opener to Stevens Point, and they've only lost 1 other one since then. So they're in very good shape right now, and looking to just kind of continue the good things that they have plenty of right now.
Yeah. Moving to the ice. I know it was a little over a week ago when it was Chi-Hi fell to River Falls and such, but what's that season starting to get to a finish line for the regular season?
It is, and we had some movement this week in the conference. New Richmond has actually taken over the lead in the conference, in part because on Tuesday night, Chippewa Falls picked up a big win over Hudson.
Ooh.
Picked up a 2-1 win. That you got New Richmond right now atop the conference. Earlier in the week, Oklahoma Memorial picked up a big win over you mentioned River Falls. So it's still pretty competitive up top. You got New Richmond a game up on Hudson. Oklahoma Memorial a game and a half back. That early season tie with Chippewa Falls is kind of making things a little bit more difficult in the calculus there, but still, I mean, those are 3 teams, and then you got Chippewa. Those are all the the D and the 3 or 4 of the D1 teams in the conference that it's going to make for, once we get to that postseason, that bracket, that Division I section is going to be the last several years, really ever since that the WI has gone to 2 divisions for boys hockey, and it kind of jumbled around how that section is seated, because previously Hudson wasn't necessarily with like Memorial and North and Chi-Hi. And now they are, just because it's just how they're measuring it is different. But that last several years, that section has been just an absolute murderer's row of teams, because you've got obviously the Big Rivers is such a great conference for hockey, but then you factor in now a team like Stevens Point, who has been kind of running roughshod over in the Wisconsin Valley. Wausau West is always a solid team. Like, you've got other teams in there. I think Superior's in there too, and Superior always good at hockey. They got a great hockey history there. Like, we've seen the last few years, like the team that's made it out of that section has earned it. Like, and has been pretty battle tested by the time you get to the postseason. I think that's gonna be the case again this year. And New Richmond bumps up to Division I this year because of the WI success factor rule. So that's just adding another really good team into the mix.
Yeah.
And on the girls' side, it's
well, did I see Chippewa Falls McDowell got a big win over ECA
over ECA, and that's that's just right now just kind of a mentioned in how on the girls' side or on the boys' side how it's still pretty wide open, or it's not. I mean, you've got Richmond first. You've kind of got that specific first, second, third, but on the girls' side, it's very wide open in the Big Rivers. I mean, you got 4 teams that can still win that conference, and there's 5 teams in the conference. Like, you've got coming into today, you've got Chippewa Falls Menominee, who's tied atop the conference with St. Croix Valley. 4-2. You got Western Wisconsin a half game back, a 3-2. Western Wisconsin CFM play Monday,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got Eau Claire area who's only a game back. So really, any of those 4 teams are, I mean, and those teams have all been playing each other. Those teams have all been, kind of beating up on each other. Like, that's still anybody's game.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing to factor in too for the postseason is all these teams are together in the postseason. So, and that's a very wide open section because you've got the Big Rivers teams, you've got Cooley, Reed, and Chill, and I think Black River Falls. And Black River Falls is a really solid team too. So like, not only are you kind of setting yourself up for, if you're the team that ultimately wins the Big Rivers, that might get you a 1 seed.
Yeah.
Which that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So there's still a lot to be decided yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be one of those years where, you go into the postseason, you can make a case for 4 or 5 teams that could go to state out of that section. And that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm. Because are we getting for hockey like conference tournament time or?
Well, I mean,
because didn't Amory get
Amory
1
picked
seed?
up the big win over Ram,
Yeah,
just to McDonald, and the middle border does a conference tournament.
Okay,
not everybody does though.
Gotcha.
That's just something they do.
Gotcha.
So that's why it was so important. I mean, not just
Mm-hmm.
because those are 2 really good teams,
mm-hmm.
but because of kind of the implication of how the seeding and all that stuff works for that. But that's just that's not something a lot of conferences do, especially around here. But
Mm-hmm.
that's something the middle border does. So
right.
But we're a few weeks away from the postseason for all of those, but it's right around the corner. I mean, we've got, I think it's not tomorrow, but next Saturday, you have a lot of the wrestling conference tournaments.
Okay.
And
last night,
actually
the next thing I was going to bring up. So
yeah, because last night, Cadott wrapped up a unbeaten dual record in Clover Belt competition by winning 2 at a Clover Belt triangular. And next Saturday, their conference meetings, I believe it's in Spencer. But that gets wrapped up. Obviously, the Big Rivers has been going strong. Last night, Chippewa Falls picked up they beat Hudson in a duel. They
Mm-hmm.
knocked off Amory too, I believe, who was there for a triangular. But there's no conference tournament for the Big Rivers, but you've got those teams. I'm sure next week a lot of those teams will be grabbing some sort of meet of some kind because you don't want to have too much downtime before regionals that next week.
Right.
And then you jump right into regionals where I think Division I teams around here are in Hudson, and then sectionals, I believe, North hosts.
Okay.
So, if you want to go watch some really good Division I wrestling, you don't have to go very far.
Right.
Once that time comes.
Exactly. So, and then I know swimming, you have a really good article too about, or that's gymnastics. I was actually going to get to here too, but
but swimming last night, Eau Claire picked up a dual win with boys swimming over Chippewa Falls McDonald.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's kind of hitting that head too. I mean, Eau Claire and Hudson, those are always kind of the preeminent swim team. I mean, and not just in the conference, but once you even get to the postseason, I mean, those teams have kids at state every year, and there's a reason for it. Those are just really good programs.
Right. No, the article that I was actually going to reference, it was back on the 24th you wrote it, but the process of all these different gymnastics.
Right. When you come, I talked to a bunch of gymnasts about like putting together the floor exercise routine because to me that was just the one I noticed kind of had the most creative freedom. And I'm kind of like, what's that process like?
Yeah.
And it's actually a pretty extensive process of picking up the music and then, kind of figuring out how you go with it. And you've got certain things you need to hit, in order to get certain scoring. And like, it was really interesting because it's something that, I'll admit I didn't know a whole lot about, but, just being to talk to, 5-6 gymnasts, just kind of like about their process. And it's fascinating to see how much work comes into that and how much tinkering comes into it. Like just, throughout the year, you might show up to your first meet of the year with, what you're going to do, but like, based on what your judges tell you, based on how things go, like you're constantly tinkering with it.
Mm-hmm. To kind of wrap it up here too, I want to make sure people check out one of your latest pieces, pick it chippewa.com. But Chloe Lee, your story on Chloe Lee. If you want to give a little preview on it,
Yeah,
but Lake
it's on the website right now, so if you want to go check it out. But Lake Holcomb senior Chloe Lee, she was diagnosed in the fall with leukemia. And she's still actually undergoing chemotherapy right now, but she's back playing for the basketball team as she's doing it. And I mean, that's just a heck of a story. Like when someone and, kind of getting to learn a little bit more about her, just such an important person with that school and in that community, being able to kind of, in the face of something that is, that could really kind of derail you, especially just with kind of your mental health and stuff like that. Like she's just taken the approach you would hope anyone could with that, where she's just like, no, I'm just she's very, when I talk with her, she's very matter of fact about it. It's like, this is what I have and this is what I'm doing to beat it. Like it's just very matter of fact. Like, and it's the story obviously can go into much more detail than I can right here right now, but
Right.
it's just it's very inspirational way to kind of see how somebody approaches something that could be such a detriment, such a
Right.
something that could bring you down, and just like, no, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna do what I need to do and I'm gonna beat this. And she's on a very good track to possibly be done with chemotherapy a little bit later this year, and kind of resume everything she's been doing.
All right. So just go check it out, chippewa.com. Fantastic story by the best storyteller in our area right now, Mr. Burns. So
I think that Murph is a good storyteller.
no, it's you. No offense, Murph. All right, let's take a quick break and we'll wrap things up. We got some picks and predicts. I'm gonna make you pick the Pro Bowl, Brandon.
Jerk.
Oh, we'll be back
How
here
dare you.
in just a couple minutes. All right, we are starting to wrap up things here. We're going to get to some picks and predicts here in just a few minutes. Put your headphones on for a sec. It's somebody's birthday today, and I wanted to see if you know who this is by this description of this person. Okay, you ready for this?
I just think that years of NFL history. Me.
I saw you post, so I knew the answer.
Oh,
And my initial thought was I was going to say the name before Peter started talking, but I wanted people to try to see if they could guess along with. I don't want to ruin it for everybody listening.
okay. So
But-
should we see if anybody knows it?
Yes.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time's up.
It's Luke Anthony. No, it's-
Jeez.
no, it's Don Hudson.
Don Hudson's birthday today. Yeah. That was when, do you remember? I have still the DVD set. Do you remember? I think that was 2011 when they came out with the top 100 players of all time the first time. The NFL Network did it. And I remember like trying to guess, and Don Hudson was ranked number 9 in the top 100 players of all time in 2011. And they always had like somebody introduce or talk about that player, and Peter King was the one who talked about Don Hudson. So there's a 3-minute clip there. I don't need to play it all for everybody and bore everybody, but Don Hudson's the GOAT. So just throwing that out there. 2 Packers were in that top 10. Can you name the other one? Don't overthink it. Not a quarterback.
Oh, no, I figure that, but Reggie White.
There you go. Yeah,
Okay.
there you go.
I'm
Yep.
like going through and I'm like, oh, yeah.
Do you have any guess on who they voted number 1?
Dick Night Train Lane.
No.
I don't remember.
It was Jerry Rice they had number 1.
Okay.
Yeah. Jerry Rice was number 1. This is how things changed because that was like 2010, 2011. Like Tom Brady was in the 20s or 30s or something like that. So, yeah, I think things have changed a
Little
little.
bit.
I think Peyton was actually top 10 already over there, but I think
Wow.
so. Let me see if I can find
Wow.
it quick. Let me see if I can find it quick. Because it's always fun just like, I mean, that's almost 15 years ago
Right,
now
yeah.
when they came.
Well, kind of while you're looking up, when I got home last night, generally on Thursday nights, I don't get a lot of sleep anyway because it's a late night, early morning. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I was sitting down getting ready to go to bed and looking at my phone, and NFL had posted a video on YouTube about it was every touchdown of at least 50 yards in the playoffs going back to 2000. It was like a 50-minute video. I'm like, well, I got to watch this. So I'm watching this video, and it was such a 50 minutes of, oh, yeah, I remember that guy. You would have like, here's Tom Brady throwing a pass to Deion Branch. And the next up, Chad Pennington throwing a screen to Richie Anderson for 53. Like, it's like,
That's
oh my gosh,
awesome.
I forgot about all these people. It's Jeremy Maclin. It's whoever. Like, it was a good use of my time.
Yeah.
I didn't regret it.
Nice.
Even though I got like no sleep. That's fine. I don't regret it. I'll make up for it later.
So I've got the top. So Jerry Rice was number 1. Jim Brown was 2. Lawrence Taylor was 3. Joe Montana 4. Walter Payton 5. Johnny U was 6. Reggie White was 7. Peyton Manning was 8. Don Hudson 9. Dick Butkus number 10.
Huh.
So just 2 quarterbacks in that top 10, Montana and Manning. The next highest quarterback came in at 16, which was Otto Graham. The next highest quarterback after that was at number 20. Any guess? So you've got Montana, right? Yeah, Montana, or 3 quarterbacks top 10, because I forgot about Unitas. Montana, Unitas, Peyton. Oh, Sammy Baugh was on there too. So see, Sammy Baugh was 14. Otto Graham was 16. Who is the next quarterback?
The fact that you're asking tells me it wasn't Brady.
Nope, Brady was 1 spot behind this person.
Oh. Elway.
Nope, Elway was 2 spots behind Brady.
Okay. Vinny Testaverde.
Brett Favre.
Interesting.
Brett Favre was number 20. Tom Brady was 21. Elway 23.
Interesting.
Marino 25. Emmitt Smith 28, the all-time leading rusher.
Hmm.
So I remember when, and I think this is where they kind of did the this started the whole top 100 players every year sort of thing on that. But from a historical perspective, I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. And I mean, it goes way back, obviously, to a lot of like Jim Thorpe's on here at 37. So, but I remember watching that, and I was like, that was kind of the start of the whole Hudson thing for me. So, yeah, there's a good quote from Gus DeRay about Don Hudson. You ever hear that quote?
No.
So when he was the Lions coach, I think Peter actually talks about it in that clip. When he was a Lions coach, Packers like dominated that game, like Don Hudson dominated that game, like 3 touchdowns or something. And the famous quote from Gus DeRay afterwards was "too much Hudson." So a little nugget there for you on this Friday. Should we do some picks and predicts?
Let's do it.
Picks and predicts brought to you by, I know you're going to do it, the Elbow Room, located on in Eau Claire, right next to the Banbury Place. No football game. Well, we do. Senior Bowl. We'll do Senior Bowl pick. How about that? We do have football. So we're gonna do that. Because the Shrine game was actually last night too. So we will do that. But first, let's do some NBA games. Since we've got the Bucks in action tonight. But before we pick the Bucks game here, let's go with we'll do Phoenix at Golden State.
Phoenix.
I will go with Phoenix as well. So, and then just because the line's so close, Detroit's a 1.5 point favorite. Dallas at Detroit.
Dallas.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Dallas too. And then Bucks versus Spurs.
I'm gonna go with the Bucks.
I'm gonna go Bucks too. So let's do some college basketball because we've got both Marquette and Wisconsin in action coming at you tomorrow. Marquette's actually in action of 2 top 25 teams. UConn kind of fallen down a little bit this year, but Danny Hurley, after the offseason he had, where was he going to be the Lakers coach? Then he gets a big pay raise. Now he's been like, everybody's kind of just like focused on just talking point. How do I want to say this? Sound bites all over the place right now. See the latest one?
Making sure referees know exactly who he is.
The greatest coach or the best coach in basketball right now. Did you see that one? I think that was last week.
Yeah, that was pretty recent.
Don't turn your back on me. I'm the best coach in the game or something like that. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I guess numbers don't lie at this point though, right?
Yeah, I mean.
So let's go to let's do Marquette versus UConn then, since we were just talking about that.
I believe that's a primetime game.
I believe it is, and it's in Marquette.
In Milwaukee.
Yeah, I know.
I'm going to take Marquette. I think this can be
not Marquette, Michigan.
No, I'm assuming at Pfizer.
Yeah,
but that's going to be a raucous crowd, I think, and I'm going to take Marquette.
Pfizer Forum. No, I said this earlier this week when, as a kid, I would play as Marquette on a video game. I'm talking like elementary, and I always thought it was in Michigan. Marquette, Michigan. Because I was city, so now it's just a joke for me.
They're the UP.
Yeah, yep.
They were the UP's team.
Yep. But that's before the internet, kids. So didn't know that. How about this one? Number 5, Florida at number 8, Tennessee.
I'm going to take Tennessee. I think they played a little bit. Was it those two? I forget. There's 2 that played earlier, and one just whooped the other. I forget if that was the matchup or not. But either way, I'm going to take Tennessee.
I know Tennessee whooped Arkansas.
Well, maybe that was Arkansas I was thinking of then, and Mr. Calipari. But
which we're going to pick here in a sec because there's something coming
that's
up.
The game, yeah.
I think quietly, St. John's, people are really top 15.
Rick Pitino.
Yeah. They're going up against Providence. So Providence at St. John's in New York.
Did Pitino used to coach for Providence?
Yeah. I think that's where you got to start.
Yeah. So I will take St. John's.
Was it Providence or Seton Hall?
No, I think it's Providence.
I
think it's Providence.
I'm going to go St. John's. Number 20, Missouri at 14, Mississippi State.
Missouri loves company. I'm going to take Missouri.
I'll go Mississippi State. Let's do Auburn, number 1 in the country, taking on number 23, Ole Miss. What?
But you said number 2.
I did.
I'm going to take the Fighting Bruce Pearls.
Yeah, me too. Will Green Bay get a win? Green Bay at Detroit Mercy. What is it, like 15-game losing streak or whatever the heck it's up to right now?
I'm going to take Detroit Mercy.
Yeah, I'm going to take Detroit Mercy.
By the way, the game I was thinking of, I was right. back in earlier in January, Florida beat then number 1 Tennessee 73-43.
Okay.
I'm still sticking my pick though. Rocky Top.
Yep. Let's do there's a lot of games on tomorrow. Holy cow.
There is.
Let's do 22 Texas Tech at 6 Houston.
Houston.
I'm going to go with Texas. Houston, Texas, not Texas Tech. Boy, this, I don't know. It feels like it's lost a little luster, but North Carolina at Duke.
Duke. Yeah.
Duke.
You're right. I mean, North Carolina's
they were ranked up and down this year, and
yeah. It's crazy though that you went through all those games and that was one that's just like, oh yeah, by the way, Duke, North Carolina's just kind of there.
Yep.
But yeah, this is a big game day tomorrow. College basketball. That's all right with me.
The return of John Calipari to Kentucky, Arkansas at number 12, Kentucky. I love Rick Pitino putting out a video saying, give us a standing ovation.
Yeah.
That ain't happening. You know it's not.
Well, Rick's speaking from experience when he made the return, but I'm going to say Arkansas. Give me Arkansas.
Ooh, I'm going to go Kentucky. The Pope leading Kentucky to victory. Wisconsin taking on Northwestern.
I think Wisconsin bounces back. They're defensively, like, they're not bad. Like, their Ken Palm rating is still pretty decent in defense, but that's just something that could be the difference between them being like a legitimate contender and like a second tier Big Ten team that's good, but not great.
Right.
That defense, they just got to be able to shore that up a little bit.
I'm going Wisconsin. I'm going to go Wisconsin too. So, Senior Bowl, the national team or the American team?
Early on, when you actually looked up the rosters, I'm going to go with the national team.
It's funny because I got the rosters up too. You going national?
I'm going to go national.
Ooh. All right. Why? Because of Dylan Gabriel at Oregon as the quarterback, or
is he playing?
I have no idea.
I just like the national team better.
Okay. Well, for argument's sake, I'll go with the American then.
American team. Jalen
Milroe over at Alabama. Riley Leonard at Notre Dame.
I got a pick for you: Harvard or Cornell?
Cornell, Wisconsin.
Andy's alma mater.
Thank you. Anybody doesn't know it's Office reference for
Cornell.
basketball?
Yeah, Cornell. Ever heard of it?
Yeah. I'll go Harvard. Because isn't is he still coaching at Harvard? Former Michigan coach. I can picture him. Harvard always is like a 12 seed or a 13 seed in the tournament. I mean, yeah, Tommy Amaker is still the coach.
Wow,
yeah.
I just noticed this, but I'm gonna take Cornell.
You would.
I love Cornell, but also
I love Cornell, the city.
Interesting fact though. Both teams also play tonight. 2 games in 2 days.
Really?
Really?
They play each other tonight?
No.
Okay.
They play other teams, and then they play again tomorrow.
That doesn't happen.
It happens in the Ivy League because there's a fair amount of Friday, Saturday games.
Okay.
They're especially in conference play, they're not as spread out as a lot of other conferences are.
Gotcha. All right. So there you have it. Those are our picks and predicts.
You want to go to the game?
What?
You want to go to the game?
No.
Tickets start at $19.
Well, that ain't bad, but you know,
smart. And then they play again in 2 weeks.
What? Okay. All right. Since we've got just about 2 minutes left here you come with some Pro Bowl stuff, Brandon. You ready? So there's nothing going. They did stuff yesterday. They're not doing anything today. So, or Saturday. So they did stuff on Thursday, nothing on Friday and Saturday. For whatever reason over there. But you can go with Team Peyton or Team Eli to go for the 3-peat.
I'm gonna go Team Eli to go for the 3-peat.
I'm gonna go Team Eli too, I think. I'm gonna go in the participation bowl, as they're calling it. So yeah, I'm gonna go Team Eli. It looked like Peyton was getting a little pissed last night at his team. Just saying, he was getting a little annoyed.
Is he gonna go ahead and go out there and suit up?
I don't know, but I will say I didn't watch the first one. The second one, that was one of the most boringest games of dodgeball I've ever witnessed in my life. It was pretty dull. Not a lot of action. You know, they were great at quoting the movie Dodgeball, but not very great at actually playing it. So it was pretty boring. Got to get some more action. I think they need to do. I said this the other day. Change the Pro Bowl activities into the American Gladiators and bring back all of those events.
Or your championship event, you take the aggro crag from Nickelodeon's Guts. Would you love to see offensive linemen climbing this big mountain?
Yeah.
With like stuff falling on them and stuff, or or make them do the slippery stairs.
I want to see somebody like J.J. Watt on the top, though, too, pelting tennis balls at people as they try to get, through that, or the joust, or, I mean, what is it? They had the football one where, I mean, that was like the most intense one. Or where they pushing during that wheel and you got to get in the little thing and then the steam moves up. I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to do their best Nitro impression? Right
or this just turns into a big game of Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Jeez, now we're really going down. Man, we were talking about Gladiators the other day, and I was going down memory lane here. Matt Millen was one of the announcers for crying out loud. So is he still around? I know he had some art issues. So
yeah, I think he is. Yeah, because I think he did some Big Ten games this week.
Oh, that's right.
So he's still.
All right, have a good weekend, everybody. DP Danets are up next. We will. I guess it's Super Bowl week next week, Brandon. Yay. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you Monday morning, 6 a.m.